Welcome to the Collaborative Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Krause. Our guest today is Stephen Sywak. Stephen is coming on for the second time and is a mechanical engineer who's done some amazing stuff in entertainment, including Cirque du Soleil, giant displays over Times Square, I think a bunch of them. And Stephen, thanks for coming on. Also, Space
Thank you,
Robots.
Spencer. It's great to be back again. I actually sat down the other night and watched a bunch of the footage from the first interview, and I had a lot of fun watching it.
Nice.
Of course, being an egoist, that's understandable.
Aren't we
But
all?
it looked like I had a lot of fun interviewing, and I posted it on Facebook again, and some of my friends saw it and were very appreciative of it. And so I'm trying to put engineering in a good light because the world could always use more engineers.
Thank you for the boost. I agree. I mean, it's definitely a field that kind of just, is like probably looked on as sort of nerdy from the outside. And
hmm
so when I meet
The,
someone
the,
like
the,
you that makes it fun and relatable, and I try to be that way as
I
much as
always
I
I
can.
always have felt that the geek shall inherit the earth,
I like that.
and even my son, who I never much thought of as a nerd or a geek. I'm not quite sure the definition anymore, but
Yeah, I don't know the difference
he and
myself.
I, over the course of the pandemic, we got to share some Arduino lessons together remotely. He's in New Orleans. I'm here in New York.
That's awesome.
So we do a Zoom meeting and we'd watch a YouTube video on today's lesson in Arduino, and we'd program it and do all that. And he's into model making like
That's
I
cool. So
was
you
when
had
I
two
was.
separate Arduinos and you just zoom it across and
Well,
compare.
the thing is, I have some experience with programming. I'm not a full-fledged programmer, but I did a bunch when I was in high school and a little in college. And actually, I even did some programming of the Levitator for Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, cool.
But I've always had a little bit of a programmer's mindset. I got it well enough to be handy at it. I
Nice.
cannot compete with the guys who do it for a living.
Those
But
guys are next
my
level.
son never had that background, doesn't have the programming background. I'm trying to get him to learn Python. But so we'd be working on these Arduino lessons, and I can edit somebody else's code a lot better than I can create code from scratch. And so the guy would present the code, and I go, "Oh, it does this. It flashes the blue light. I can make it flash the blue light and the red light and the green light, and I can do this and I can do this." And I'm like running, downfield with all this extra coding and all the loops. And my son
That's
is like,
awesome.
I need to put a go to at the end of the four next loops so I can make sure that I exit the loop properly. And it's like, oh my boy, you don't put a go to at the
No,
end of
you
the
use a
four next
break.
loop. That's what the next is for. So
That's
he'll be okay. He'll get there. He'll get there. But of
awesome.
course,
The
before
fact that
me there was
GoTo
my
still
dad, who
exists,
was
and
what?
I said the fact that GoTo still exists in 2021 is amazing to me.
I know it's shameful. We should all be embarrassed. But my dad, even when he was in his 90s, was still programming in GW Basic. And whenever he and I would talk about what his next computer might be, his first statement was, "It's got to be able to run my GW Basic code. Just make sure that it's going to do that."
That's funny.
I mean, the biggest problem I had with my dad, seriously, was that he was writing a database using GW Basic, and for years, I tried to get him to use like FilePro or some cheap little open source database, and he refused
MySQL, there's a bunch of them.
anything. But again, if this was the worst headbutting I had with my dad,
Better than
I'll take
most.
that. That's fine.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But
What is GW Basic, by the way? Like, I learned to program on TI Basic. I've used Visual Basic. I don't know
I
GW Basic yet.
I keep thinking it's George Washington
That's what
Basic
I thought.
for some reason, maybe created at George Washington University or some such. I'm not quite sure,
Fair enough.
but or just general basic, interpreters and compilers. I explained interpreters and compilers to my son the other night. I think he got it. He's pretty quick on the uptake.
That's awesome. Is
So
it your same son that's in the vampire movie that's coming out on
he
Netflix?
is, and the vampire movie is out, and
Oh, I gotta watch that. It looks really good.
it's on Netflix. It's called Night Teeth,
Night Teeth.
Nightteeth, Teeth,
I'm gonna watch that when I get home.
and he's at around the 1 hour mark, where the vampires are in a nightclub and the vampire hunters, Abraham Lincoln is not among them. The vampire hunters come into the nightclub, and one of the guys, he stabs one of the vampires, and the vampire dissipates into vampire fire, as they all do apparently. So I've heard. The shot immediately following that vampire dissolving is one of the hunters whipping out a very large pistol in the middle of the dance floor, and my son is like right next to him. The muzzle of the gun is right in my son's face, but one guy is trying to get my son to back up, but my son is standing his ground.
Oh, nice.
And he's in a couple of the shots before, sitting at tables in the upper balcony area. If you're not related to him, you will never see him in those shots. But when he's on the dance floor and the guy's waving the gun around, he's got black hair, and he also has his shirt sleeves rolled up.
Nice.
Because he has some massive tattoos on his forearms, which you cannot see in a wide-angle shot.
Oh, so they wanted to get that ink in.
The filmmakers figured maybe we can see them. I don't know. Yeah, but so he's in at about the 1 hour mark, and then after that, so that's it for Night Teeth. Yeah. And he's also in a movie that's going to be on Apple TV.
Oh, cool.
Currently the title is In with the Devil.
In with the Devil. I'm sensing a theme here.
Taron Egerton, who is Eggsy in the Kingsman series.
Oh, it's a good movie.
As the lead character, he is the one who is in with the devil. He is not the devil. And Gregory is a prisoner at this state penitentiary. But apparently there is a shot. There had been a fight. There's a fight at the penitentiary, and Greg gets beat up by a bunch of neo-Nazis.
Oh shit! Because he's a Jew, probably.
Lying in a pool of his own blood and vomit on the floor of the cafeteria in the penitentiary, and the main characters step over his body. He's still alive, but they step over his beaten body as they walk out of the cafeteria. But Greg he's very friendly on set. He's very gregarious. I don't know where he gets.
If he was raised by you, I'm sure he is.
Yes, very true. And he got to be friends with the assistant director, and the assistant director is talking to him and pulls out his iPhone, and he can whip through the dailies on his iPhone, because that's the state of technology today for filming. And he goes, Greg, you got to look at this shot. He goes, that is a gorgeous shot. He goes, I 1,000% guarantee that shot's going to be in the final cut.
That's awesome.
So when that comes out, it's going to be all over my Facebook page. At one point, Greg's got an interesting look. He's got big ear gauges. He's got a bit of a gaunt face, intense eyes. But he was a background character. He started out as a distant background prisoner, and eventually he worked his way up to hero prisoner.
Yeah,
which means he's like first to be called when they need background prisoners. He's on the A list of the background team.
Oh, cool.
But at one point, they kept on wanting him on set, so they were constantly announcing his name. Greg Sywak, come to the set. Greg Sywak, come on stage 57, awesome. Whatever the heck it was. And at one point, he's walking to his spot. They haven't started filming yet, and he crosses in front of Taron Egerton. And Taron says, mate, we'll be all right as long as you remember who's the star here.
That's funny.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that come out. It's a 6-part miniseries. It's not effects heavy, so I'm expecting maybe 4 to 6 months for them to edit and mix it.
Also, the level of ego for Taron to say that,
Greg says he was fine, and they're all joking around.
It might have been tongue in cheek. Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, the thing is for a background character to get, again, I am more than likely biased towards my son, but
of course,
as Greg tells the story, for a background actor to get that much recognition on set, it's going to get noticed.
That's awesome.
They're constantly calling him up to the set. It's like, yeah, there's people are gonna start giving you shit.
Yeah,
And
that makes
he
sense.
said that he'd go back with everybody else and sit around like smoking cigarettes, having a sandwich, whatever. He goes, Dad, the guys are starting to like separate out from me. He goes, I'm no longer one of the gang because they keep bringing me to the set. So I said, well, it's sort of like one of those reality shows. You're not there to make friends. You're there to win.
That's awesome.
But no,
I'm glad that he's rising up like that. That's
yeah,
really cool to hear.
he's made some friends. Hopefully, he'll get into some other stuff soon.
Yeah, that's great news. I mean, it's also just the level of pride you've got with the scene you described is a hilarious juxtaposition. So just getting the crap beat out of him by neo-Nazis, you're like, it's amazing. He's doing great.
He's getting beat up by neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, with his look and the number of tattoos he has, all over his torso and arms,
Yeah.
it's like I'm just glad they didn't cast him as a neo-Nazi. But he's got a very harsh look. But we've had we've had plenty of political and philosophical discussions, so I'm not worried about him.
Yeah, I mean, from everything you've told me about him, he sounds like a great guy that I would
Yeah.
like to meet one day.
So he's good. His girlfriend is very wise. She knows when she's got to take him to the hospital when he falls off a roof, for instance.
How did he fall off a roof?
When he's not on set, his main job is he's an arborist, so he does tree climbing.
Okay.
He'll put on the ankle spikes and he'll shimmy
Oh,
up
cool.
a tree 100 feet in the air.
That's awesome.
He'll get carried up on the weight ball, the safety ball on a crane, 100 feet, and he'll step off onto the tree and start at it with a chainsaw. But he was on a roof 15 feet up, and someone had pulled a branch clear to start cutting it, and then I don't know what happened. They released the branch, and it thwapped him
Brutal.
off the roof, and he landed on a wood pile.
Brutal.
So maybe the wood pile reduced the fall from 15 to 12 feet, but you're landing on a wood pile.
Yeah, that's not pleasant.
But luckily his girlfriend's smart enough to know that, yeah, I'm taking you to the hospital.
Nice.
So I've said thank you to her many times.
Yeah, it's a good thing for sure.
Have you seen the Sinbad, the comedy bit by Sinbad?
I haven't seen any Sinbad stuff.
He
That's
says,
like
he goes, when you get past a certain age, when you get past 40, you don't want some, some sexy, sultry woman who can, well, I'll leave it at that. He goes, you want someone who can recognize the signs of stroke.
That's funny.
He goes, if you're out at dinner and all of a sudden your face falls and you can't form words, you want her to recognize that she needs to give you an aspirin and get you to the hospital right away, and that you're not making fun of her. So I recommend you watch. It's a hilarious skit.
I'll check it out.
Perhaps it's hilarious only if you're over 40, but I don't know. I think
I'll be over 40 soon enough. I mean, with any luck, right?
With any luck. The alternatives are much worse.
Yeah, for sure. I like getting older. I mean, it's been fun,
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of dread it, and then you start to feel it, and you're like, it's pretty good actually.
Yeah. No, but it's funny. I talk when I talk about my plans for the future, again, because I've got this theatrical background. It's like, yeah, well, I'm in my third act right now, so we'll see what I do for my third act.
Do you have any plans, like any hobbies, any projects you're trying to do, any like bucket list items?
Right now, you can see a little bit of it behind me. I just moved. I moved from an apartment in Huntington to my father's house in Plainview. My father passed away September of 2020.
Sorry, man.
So thank you very much. But he hit 95.
Oh, wow.
He made it to 95.
That's pretty awesome, actually.
And he did have a valve replacement. He did have a pacemaker. He wasn't in perfect health, but he was in pretty good health.
If you make it to 95, you're doing better than most people.
He was in good health physically, and mentally he was pretty much 95 to 100% mentally up
Awesome.
until 94 and a half.
Yeah, that's how was my granddad, who also passed at 95. I mean,
Yeah. So
yeah, they
I feel,
retired him at 94. He was a cardiologist, and
oh my goodness.
he kept doing cardiology until he was 94 years old. And then the hospital he worked at was like, you got to go. And then he just deteriorated very rapidly after that,
Yeah. Well,
unfortunately.
the thing is, you need, it seems like we need to keep busy. We need to
I
have
think that's
goals
it.
and things we want to do, and it keeps us focused and it keeps us attentive and smart and young at heart.
Yeah.
And at 94, he was starting to realize that most, but not all, but most of his friends had passed
GW
away.
Basic.
Yeah, he was still doing. We still shared the GW Basic, but just a few months before he passed, his girlfriend of about 20 years passed
Ah,
away.
brutal.
We lost my mom, his wife, obviously. Well, these days not obviously, but still, my
Yeah.
mom, his wife, about 25 plus years ago,
Yeah.
and he went to a grief counselor, and within a couple of months, he was dating his grief counselor.
Sounds effective.
So I don't think there was any real concern about whether he was resilient or not.
Yeah.
I would say he was resilient. But so he passed away. The house became available. I worked out with my brother how I might purchase his half of it. We're still going through some of that, but either way, it seems silly to keep paying for a rental when I'm basically gonna buy and live in this house.
Yeah, makes sense to
So
me.
here I am. So I've got this and a couple of other things that I've got to take care of, and then don't
Congrats
tell
on the
my
move. I know
boss.
you that was taking up all your time last time we talked.
Well,
So
I was working at this place called Blood Manor.
if you censor it, yeah, yeah, that's go out a teeny bit, purchase tickets, bloodmanor.com.
There we go.
That's awesome.
And they are a haunted attraction in New York City. The where was it? New York City's premier haunted attraction. And I
Manhattan?
did some work for him in the middle of COVID as his animatronics guy.
Cool.
My experience with programming and pneumatics and engineering made me a really good fit. I'll be honest, I knew a little bit about. I knew how to program small little controllers like CompuMotor stuff from years ago. Hadn't done it in a while, but I knew I could regain the skill set.
Yeah, makes
So I
sense.
started working for him. I had to learn all of his controllers. He had 3 or 4 different styles of controllers, so I learned how to work them all
Badass.
while working for him. Um, and so I was giving him 100% back in 2020, October, November, September, October, and a little into November. And then this year, doing the same. He was a little upset because I wasn't able to give him 100%. But of course, I was working full time this year,
Makes
whereas
sense.
last year I was not.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking if I can give him 80% and I can give my job 80%,
You're still working like a dog.
yeah. So
Yeah,
I just hope he's happy with that. So that took up a bunch of time in October. Moving took up a bunch of time. There's some other things I need to take care of. But once I clear my plate, I've always been enamored of film and what is now video, although I still will use film references when I
awesome.
talk about it, sort of showing my age.
Yeah, I mean, who
Um,
doesn't like film though? Tarantino still shoots 70 millimeter, right?
yeah,
So
yeah. But so I'm hoping, I've got a couple of story ideas. One of them I've scripted, although in looking at it, I realized that the script structure really needs some improvement. It's a short, but once I get these other critical items off my plate, I know some people with cameras, with some directing ability, with 4K stabilized drones for some aerial shots that I have planned for one of the films I've got
very cool.
outlined. So I really want to try and get into. I'm 60. I
Yeah.
figure at best I have 10 or 20 years within which, if I keep my health and my wits about me, I might make a movie or two.
I know you got your dad's genetics. If he lived to 95, you might have more than that.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So I think I can put together a team. Uh, I think I know how to write. Uh, I certainly know enough. I've been told I take criticism well, which to me is important. I years ago I worked on an independent feature film,
Cool.
which was you'll never see it. It's called The Only One. It was originally called Sarah. No, it was originally called The Only One. Then it became Sarah, and it has the main actress in it. I can't remember her name right now, but she went on to become a actual actress, and she
Cool.
was in Heroes. I forget her character's name, but she went on to be a real actor. But the director, what the writer, the producer, writer, and director was all one guy, and that
Interesting.
and he did
Sounds
not
like Mel
take
Brooks.
well in the right. If you got the right guy, it's fine. He was brand new to film.
Ah,
He had
brutal.
taken one course of filmmaking at NYU, and he hooked
Brutal.
up with one of the professors, a young guy who was maybe mid 30s at the time, who was also one of my professors, or an adjunct, a teaching assistant for
Yeah.
the classes I took. Because my 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 ex and I met at NYU Film School,
Oh,
Evening Film
cool.
School.
I did not know that.
And Lou LaVolpe was one of the teaching assistants. And towards the end of one of the editing classes, he sort of tapped us both on the shoulder because he saw we were pretty intent and pretty good at what we were doing. And he goes, I'm involved with this guy. We're making a short, and we need crew for the short. No money, but it's only going to be a month or two of weekends, and it'll be great experience. And we think you'll be able to contribute to the shoot. So Peg and I signed on,
Nice.
and the guy decided to go from a short to a feature length film.
Ah, how much did that put you in for in
It
terms of
was a
time?
romance, but not a romantic comedy. It was a romance, but the
Interesting.
female character, other than a few lines as a young girl, never had any more lines in the show. It was a male. It was a wet dream of a movie. It was PG rated, maybe
Yeah,
PG-13. There was some dry humping going on in
that's
the
pretty
early
funny.
footage, but the main
It's
character,
directed by a 5-year-old.
this actress who then went on to be in Heroes and some other stuff. Uh, so she and it's a Romeo and Juliet type story.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Nobody
it's
dies.
old as dirt. Yeah.
So she and this young guy hook up when they're 12, 13. Her parents think things are getting too intense, and then they decide to move. And the boy doesn't know where she's moved to, and spends the rest of his life moping. So the main character is inactive, ineffectual, and constantly moping and
Yeah,
sighing for his lost love, but doesn't
sounds
do a damn
ineffectual.
thing about it. He meets this guy who is credited as the old man, who is never given a name in the movie
That's
and is
funny.
constantly referred to by the crew and the cast as the old man. And in the script, it's the old man. And he decides to help. I forget the main name of the character, the name of the main character, but he decides to find her. So he sends out private eyes, and they find her, and the main character and the woman are reunited at the end. Even then, she
How is that
doesn't
not a
have a single
comedy?
spoken line. She doesn't have a single line. And the main character is always, he sees some woman that reminds her of Sarah, and he gets lost in this gauzy.
Were they just too lazy to write it, or like what did that manifest? I
He
wonder.
he wrote it. He wrote the script, and he had all the dialogue. But the writer slash director slash producer decided that he wanted good things to happen to the main character without the main character having to do any work for them.
Weird. That doesn't
It's
sound
like it's
like a
like well,
payoff.
it's sort of like a Disney princess movie in reverse,
Yeah.
which is or the Lion King,
Well, I
which
guess
is
like there's a few movies like that. Like Forrest Gump is a little bit like that, right? I mean,
well, Forrest Gump puts himself out there.
Yeah, that's true, but he doesn't.
He,
I don't feel like he's actively
not
looking to get in
he's
those
not an
adventures.
overly active character, but he's always out there doing things. And
That's
there's an
true.
aspect of his personality. He's sort of a blank slate that people get to write on, but that aspect of his personality allows things to happen. Maybe not causes things, but allows things. Um, the main character of Sarah is passive throughout the entire movie, and so what one night, like at 2 in the morning, when we were shooting at this incredibly huge mansion in New Jersey, I came up with a counter story, which is that when the private eye hired by the old man finds Sarah, she offers to double his salary if he tells everybody that she's dead. Because if this guy can't be bothered to do the legwork himself, she wants nothing to do with his sorry ass.
That's funny.
And at one point, I begged Ted, the director,
Slash
writer, producer.
producer slash writer.
I said, Ted, can we please give the old man a name? Because he's the main. He really is the only character in the story who does things. He's the one, like the immigrants in Hamilton, who gets things done.
Yeah,
Uh,
immigrants, we
and
get
he
the
goes,
job
well,
done.
what name would we give him? I
Yeah.
said, well, you could call him Tom. He said, why would I call him Tom? I said, it's an acronym for the old man. But no, he still wouldn't let us call him Tom.
That's
But
a
it was
little
a
bit
great
silly.
learning experience. It was a lot of fun. Again, I was the grip gaffer on set because, again, I was the engineer on set. At one point, we were shooting at a storefront weight room, exercise room in Jersey. A lot of the shots went on in Jersey,
Sounds like it.
and our electrician quit that morning. His parting we were all up all night at that mansion in New Jersey, and then we all got like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and we had to go in to this storefront weight room and tie into an electrical panel, and which means you take the face of the panel off,
Yeah, I did
exposing
that
all the
last
bare
week.
wires, and you have these clamps, and you screw the clamps on with one hand behind your back so you don't provide an arc path through your heart, and
Yep.
you tie in to the electrical panel. And this guy, his phrase was, he said two things that are memorable. One was, "You're not paying me enough for me to risk my life for you," and he walked out, leaving nobody there to do the tie-in. And
Did you get stuck with
like
it?
a week before, his phrase was, "You're not paying me enough for me to put up with your bullshit," which was just such a wonderful phrase.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
here we were with me with some electrical engineering knowledge. Somebody had a voltmeter. We had the clamps to do the tie-in. I'm talking to the sound guy who was actually the sound guy for the Pee Wee Herman show.
Nice.
And I said, I've never done a tie-in before. He goes, I've seen people do tie-ins. He goes, I can guide you.
That's
I
hilarious.
said, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. Give me the voltmeter, and I'm probing the content.
To try to find a buck 20,
so I can
240.
get 110 volts rather than
Nice.
220 volts. And it's like, boom, 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 boom. Okay, these are the lines we're tying into. I do the tie-in. We're fine. The problem is it was such a shitty panel. Our electrical equipment was fine, but the panel in the building was so crappy. The moment we drew any current,
Strip breakers.
the contaminants in the aluminum that were part of the clamp blocks that were part of the panel, the contaminants would burn and pop out of the aluminum and arc in fiery little meteors onto the floor. So every time we turned the lights on, a couple of minor sparks.
How much current were you drawing, bro?
They're out of the panel.
How much juice were you drawing? Did you get an ammeter measurement?
Oh, I don't know. It was back in the days of incandescent lights.
Oh, okay.
So we probably had 1,000 watts worth of lights to light this place.
That's pretty decent. Okay, so that's like 1,000 watts and 120
So 10
volts.
amps.
That's like 10
probably
amps.
8
Yeah,
to 10 amps pulling through.
that's not nothing.
Yeah, it was enough to make the little inclusions
I just hooked up.
incinerate themselves.
I hooked up a 120 amp service this week. Something.
I hope you had one hand behind your back.
Uh, Turned off the whole breaker box, so we killed the upstream power.
Yeah, that's a much better way. We didn't have that option.
Fuck. Brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
But so yeah, so I've got I've got a bit of a film background. My son was in theater. My son and daughter were both in theater in high school, and my son turns out to love theater more than I thought he did, which is fine by me. It's a lot safer than climbing up trees 100 feet in the air.
Sounds like it. I
But
mean,
yeah,
the
like I
amount of
said,
work
I've
that guy
always
has under his belt. I don't know. Well,
I
you
got
too.
into the whole engineering field because I wanted to do film effects, but I did not want to go to California. But my first opportunities were with aerospace
Yeah.
at a company called Aeroflex, and then at Grumman. I worked at Grumman and Ralph Fairchild for a while. But then I had an opportunity to work at Scenic Technologies, and I realized that. So I did Broadway effects,
Nice.
and then Vegas effects, and all of that.
Seems like a
And I
natural
realized that
transition.
it's a little tougher to do the Broadway effect
Interesting.
because it has to work every night. It has to work for probably 10 years or more. You're not always going to be there to massage it through.
Yeah.
And if it screws up, you cannot fix it in post production. You give everybody back their money for that night's performance, and someone calls you at home and calls you an asshole because your piece broke down.
That
A
makes
friend of
sense.
mine that I used to work with at Scenic Technologies, he knew a guy who did the hero effect for. I think Jamie Lee Curtis was in this, and Donald Sutherland.
What's
I
a
think.
hero
Yeah.
effect?
What?
What's a hero effect?
It was called Virus. Some alien radio transmission intercepts the Earth,
Oh, cool.
intercepts a Russian trawler, and infects the trawler's everything, or anything electronic in the trawler becomes aware, alert, or running this virus at a minimum, running this virus, and it starts piecing together robots, half robot, half human.
Interesting.
But the
Like the
hero
Borg,
robot is this giant
a little bit.
multi-armed virus ball looking thing with a couple of dozen
Like a
arms coming off.
COVID-19.
What?
Said like a
It's
COVID-19.
COVID-19 back before it was COVID-19.
Yeah.
But
Going off all around.
Phil's friend did that physical effect, but could never get it to work, unfortunately. And so he's on set, they're working with it for a week or two. As far as I can remember the story, they could never, and it's probably radio controlled, like a half a dozen, RC transmitters.
Yeah, I would imagine quite
Pull all the
complicated.
appendages. It's not working.
Brutal.
So they welded a bunch of steel rods to it, painted them green, puppeteered it to do all of its nasty business, and then took out the green rods in post production. Video or film edited them out. And so I always remember that when I think in terms of what I was doing for Broadway effects, because that was never an option.
Yeah, for sure it ain't.
You can't just paint a guy green and have him, move the head of.
No, you'd look like an asshole right then and there.
Horrors, carnivorous plant.
Yeah,
around.
I love Little Shop of Horrors. That was one of my favorite things growing up.
Okay, we worked on a road show for Little Shop of Horrors over at Scenic, and we did the Audrey 2, the giant one.
Yeah,
that was supposed to travel up and down stage.
Oh, that's cool.
The thing must have weighed 5,000 pounds.
You fucking serious?
It was a disaster. It was part of a road show, and it weighed 2.5 tons, and you had to be able to hump it in, mount it up, tie it to a track, not have it tear the track apart, not have it rip the track up from the floor or from the stage of the theater, run for a couple of nights, then pack it back into a truck and drive to the next theater. It
Did you
was
do maintenance on it in between shows, like to keep it running?
they canceled the show.
Brutal.
They could not get Audrey 2 into a manageable state.
Sorry to hear
It was
that.
just not happening. It was just a monster. We started to put her on a diet, if you would, starting with the head and trying to lighten everything from the head
That makes
back.
sense to me.
And we were just we started working on it, and I think at that point the production team, the money guys, said, you know what, we're just gonna cancel the show. This is not gonna work in a timely manner. We've lost faith or whatever, and
Brutal.
Yeah, it was.
That's one of my favorite shows too. I mean, as a kid, I loved the movie. I think I probably saw some version of that at some point. I mean,
Yeah. Somewhere I have a VHS of the original, which is a Roger Corman film, and
yeah.
Jack Nicholson is
I
in
think
it.
that's the one that I saw when I was growing up. And my parents were big Broadway and
Yeah.
musical guys.
I'm thinking probably not a musical.
So it was not a musical in that one because the one I saw was a musical. Like when I grew up on it,
Did it have what's his name from Honey I Shrunk the Kids in it?
it might have had Rick Moranis if that's who
Rick
you're referring
Moranis, yeah,
to. Um,
and Steve
there was like
Martin.
a sign like "Little Shop of Horror," and it was like all 50s esque, and so
Yeah, I think the
yeah.
first one by Roger Corman was not a musical, but
Okay, I didn't see that one then.
I wouldn't
I saw
put any
whatever
money on that.
musical one came after that, so it must have been Rick Moranis. It was I was so young, I don't remember it that well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
the song was
early
catchy.
on, we started talking about the billboard over
Yeah,
Times Square.
so we weren't recording yet, but yeah. So I'd asked you about the billboard with the windmills on it
Right.
because that was a cool
Was
project.
one of the few projects that the successful outcome was to get the project canceled.
Wait, what?
It was one of the only projects I ever worked on where the goal, after we learned about the situation, like we didn't go into it with the goal to get it canceled, but after we learned about what it was, our goal, this is when I was working at McLaren Engineering, our goal became not allowing the billboard or the wind turbines to be installed.
It's just because it was unsafe.
It was monstrously unsafe as far as we could figure. So, we, there we were working at McLaren up in West Nyack. They've since moved to New Jersey, but we were working, and a PE that Bill Gorlin, my boss, the head of the entertainment group, so a PE that he knew, who did a lot of his work evaluating signage and static signs. You take a sign, you mount it to a structure, you mount the structure to the building. Can the sign, can the structure, can the building withstand seismic, whatever the seismic is for that location? Can it withstand wind and weather and all the rest of it? Can it stand its own? Can it withstand the weight of the sign itself?
Yeah,
With a couple of people hanging on it because they've got to change the light bulb.
makes sense to me.
So this guy, and I cannot remember his name, somehow contacted Bill or in McLaren in general and said, I've got a problem. I'm working on a sign that is by its nature dynamic. It has these 8 vertical axis wind turbines, like scroller fans, like you might see in a photocopier, but oriented vertically. And so you had a scroller fan here, another scroller fan below it. Each one was
What's a
roughly 10
scroller
feet
fan?
tall. So a 20-foot tall system.
Yeah.
And then 1, 2 on the left side of the sign and 2 on the right hand side of the sign. And the goal was that Rico was paying to have this sign put up on Times Square. There was a large chase sign wrapped around the side of this building. Rico paid to they bought that space. They put up a large Rico sign, and they wanted these wind turbines, these vertical axis wind turbines there to actually generate some electricity and power the lights for the sign. And this guy, this other professional engineer, came to McLaren, came to Bill, called us up and said, this is a dynamic structure. I don't feel comfortable with these wind turbines. He goes, for starters, I don't feel comfortable doing the analysis because of the dynamics involved. But more importantly, there's something about these wind turbines that rubs me the wrong way. So I'd like you guys to get involved with analyzing the structure, but also find a way to analyze the wind turbines. So we did, and I took a look at the wind turbines, and I started talking with the company that developed the wind turbines, which is no longer in business. This, I'm sure, is not the reason why, but they're no longer in business, out in California.
Yeah.
And I said, send me the drawings. We went out to, I forget the location on Long Island, in Deer Park, actually. I just took a look at the New York Times article before. So it was stored in Deer Park. I think Lamar Signs.
Yeah.
Again, this is 2008. So what, 13 years ago?
Yeah. Lamar strikes me as a safe bet. They have a lot of signage everywhere.
Yeah. So we went out, myself and this guy Adam Yeager went out. We took a look at the signs. Not really, and Lamar hadn't built these signs. I forget who built them. Probably Packwind might have. They designed them, and I think probably they built them also.
Pack would be in the turbine company.
Lamar was going to do the install, but until they were installed, they were being stored. And until they were installed, they were being stored at Deer Park. So Adam and I went out to Deer Park and took a look at the signs. The bearings were poorly designed, poorly implemented. We felt like they were probably undersized, but more importantly, was each of the turbine blades was an airfoil cross section, and it was about 10 feet long. And there was a top circular plate and a bottom circular plate. And the airfoils were nice. They were extruded aluminum. They looked fine. But the way they were held to the top and bottom plates was there was about an inch or so worth of pin in the top of the blade and in the bottom of the blade. And that was it.
Wow.
The plates were constrained against moving by the bearings, which were not really the best for this application, but the bearings never really even came into our analysis because we realized things were going to be a problem beforehand. So we took a look at that, didn't feel comfortable. I don't even, there was a cheesy little generator of sorts, a direct generator,
Yeah.
1-to-1, no gear up. It was just the rudiments of providing some electrical power when these things spun up in the wind.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And so we started talking with Packwind. I said, I need to see your analysis for these blades. I need to understand at what speed these guys are going to spin. There's no governor on them. The generator is not going to be able to generate enough back force. A generator is a motor running backwards.
Yeah, makes sense.
A motor is a generator running forwards.
Yeah.
But so it's like, even if you were to power up the generators, make them act like motors, I don't think you're going to be able to generate enough torque to
stop the blades,
retard these blades when they're spinning up in a high-speed wind. So we need to know what the max speed is of these blades. And they said, they'll spin around 430 RPM. And the diameter was nominally 3 feet, roughly. So I did the math. And the math was such that the amount of the amount of acceleration, centripetal acceleration on the blades, especially at the center of these 10-foot long blades, would cause the blade to bow out at 432 RPM. It would cause the blade to bow out. When the blade bows out, its radius increases. When its radius increases, the amount of force on the blade also increases, causing it to bow out more. It would have been a runaway situation. And very early on in that situation, the blades would bow out enough that one of the ends of the blade would move more than an inch away from the plate. In moving more than an inch away from the plate, it would dislodge from the pin, holding it in place, which means you would have had a bunch of vertical axis wind turbines in the middle of Times Square, spinning up perhaps at 430 RPM, maybe on New Year's Eve, and releasing
Holy moly.
metallic blades above the heads of an unsuspecting
10
audience.
feet long. Yeah, that's
And
gotta
I
do some
said,
damage.
this is a really bad idea. You don't want to do that. And the first response was, oh, did we say 430 RPM? We meant 43 RPM. The blades are self-stalling at high speed.
What?
They said the basically once the blades get past a certain RPM, the way the wind responds by passing through the cage, in essence, it's a giant squirrel cage spinning. Basically, the airfoils spoil the wind flow and they self limit at a certain speed. And the Packwind people told me that new speed. I can't remember what it was. And I said, I am not qualified to go and calculate this self-limiting speed. They said, well, we're running a test on a similar system of blades in Arizona. I think it was Arizona or wherever the heck it was. Somewhere
They fly you out?
or Nevada or Arizona, someplace in the Midwest,
Desert.
on a big
Yeah.
open desert, because if the thing fucking breaks loose, you'd want it to be in a big open desert and not in the middle of a populated area like
Times Square.
Times Square. So they said, well, you can come out and you can observe it, and you can see how the speed of the turbine self limits. Now it was a shorter turbine, similar diameter, but a shorter turbine. So I said, it's a start. I'll come out and I'll take a look. So I drive my car to Newark Airport, and I find a good parking spot. Damn it! And as I'm getting out of my car and chirping the alarm, I get a cell phone call from the office at McLaren. They had just gotten a call from this wind turbine company, saying, I don't know if it was saying that the test was canceled, but my trip was canceled. So I was no longer authorized to go out to Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, wherever the heck this test was. So I turned around, got back in my car, and headed back to the office.
I think you had a good parking spot.
I said, you guys, we cannot authorize you. I felt like, what's his name in Jurassic Park? I do not recommend this park. But I said, we cannot sign off on these wind turbines for you to install them over Times Square. It's not going to happen. These should not be installed in a public space. And so what they did was they found another PE who would approve it.
Brutal.
And I won't tell you the PE's name, in part because I don't remember it, but basically figured this guy basically himself out for money.
Yeah.
So we had zero respect for him. And they installed the wind turbines.
Holy
moly. One of our engineers who worked on Broadway saw them installing the wind turbines. Giant crane. They had to shut down this intersection right at Times Square, right where they would typically, 100 feet away, there would be the ball jump. So this is the heart of Times Square. They had to shut down all the streets heading in so they could get the crane there, so they could pull these things off of the truck and mount them. And if I'm remembering correctly, they put pins in the turbines between the turbine discs and the support arms to lock the turbines against rotation.
Interesting. Okay.
And they mounted them without the ability for them to spin up in a wind. But McLaren had already, we were done with our contribution to the.
Did you see it being installed? Like, did you ever go there and take a look just to?
At one point, I think I went and I saw it. So Fred saw them installed. He looked it up, or somebody looked it up. $70,000, $70,000 to install them, and then to take them down, then to install them again, and then to take them down again. I think, if I'm remembering,
70 each time or 70 in aggregate?
Each time. So $280,000 all told, over $250,000 to try these suckers out. So they, if I'm remembering correctly, they installed them with the pins to lock out the rotation. Decided, now we can do better. Took them down. reinstalled them, allowing for rotation. Probably had the shit scared out of them, took them down, and then mounted a series of solar panels to the top instead. So, and the funny, this is all because Rico, the camera and photocopier people, wanted to show how energy conscious and energy aware they were.
They spent $250,000.
All this energy, $250,000 worth of effort and energy, and large trucks moving large pieces of equipment, mounting and demounting and mounting and demounting,
Burning fuel the whole time.
all burning all this fuel all the time to show how they were so energy aware and energy conscious and green and all the rest of it.
That's hilarious.
But again, I think one of the few projects where success was measured in our ability to stop the project from happening.
I mean, at least they ended up putting in solar panels at the end.
Right. And it was a very pretty sign, and it was all good, but it's like, nobody appreciates the fact that I saved hundreds of thousands of people from injury and mutilated death.
I appreciate that. I mean,
yeah.
It needed to be done.
But that was it was a challenging project, and when I started to do the math for the centripetal loading on the blades, so it was 2008. So I had already produced my centripetal loading spreadsheet for Ender's Game.
Nice.
Which I then used to help analyze centripetal loading for Cirque du Soleil's Humanity, which
awesome.
I also then utilized to help calculate the centripetal loading on the giant stage for Ka.
Nice.
Which I then used a modification of the same spreadsheet to calculate centripetal loading on these wind turbines.
That's awesome.
And then I started to look into, okay, so we start to deform, and now what's the load? Oh, it's just doubled. Oh, we deform more. Oh, look at the ends. So I did the whole analysis of a uniformly loaded end-supported beam to see how the ends shrink in when the beam takes on a parabolic form. And it's like, oh, okay, so at 300 or whatever RPM, the blades will dislodge. And they're 70 feet above your head, and now they're flying through Times Square in Lord knows what direction.
70 feet? I would think much higher than that.
Well, the bottom of the blade was probably, I would say the bottom of the blade was maybe 30 feet. And, oh no, it was probably 10 or 14 people high.
Okay,
so,
that's not
60.
I'd assume much
60
higher.
To 70 feet. I might be right.
Yeah.
But,
just from the picture I saw, it looked like it was on top of a skyscraper. So, all right.
It's on the side of I think on the side of the Chase Bank.
Okay, cool.
But you'll this is a good time to show that image again, and people can see. And if you contribute to the address below, but yeah, it would have been an absolute disaster. And I think that
the rotation lock thing is so
that
typical.
year or the next year, one or both my kids wanted to go to Times Square for New Year's, and it's like, you guys are lucky. I stopped that shit from happening.
We can go, but only because those windmills aren't there.
Yeah. Maybe I can use the vertical axis wind turbines in my in a horror film.
That would be an interesting horror film.
Yeah.
Like only nerds would get it.
What do you call it? Final Destination 24.
Final Destination? What are those about?
Oh, you've never seen the Final Destination movies? Final Destination movies are a bunch of kids, high school, maybe early college kids, are going out into the world to do a thing. They're going to go ride a roller coaster. They're going to go to a hot tub. They're going to do whatever it is they're going to do. One of them has a premonition that that shit's gonna go bad. He has, or they go, or one of them, Final Destination 4, which is the 3D one, which is why I have it. So
Nice.
they all go to a NASCAR type race, and one of them has this whole dream sequence of a disaster at the race with cars running into the audience and running up into the bleachers and killing half the people there. So he decides, he convinces the 4 or 5 people he's with that they all need to leave right now. That he's just had this horrible feeling that something's
And they
horrible is
actually
about to
leave.
happen, and we all need to go. And they go,
They just don't be like,
and
shut the
they
fuck up,
survive.
Stevie.
What?
They don't just go like, shut the fuck up, you're wrong. Why
They,
your
they
dream does
do,
not
and
affect my bearing.
that's part of the challenge. So
Okay.
he's got to convince them, or in another case, they've got to convince them to get the hell out of there. So they do, and then as they're leaving the bleachers, the disaster happens.
Oh wow.
And everybody who's still on the bleachers is killed or mutilated. So the effects in the final death, I'm not a big fan of gore, but
Yeah.
the effects that they have in the Final Destination films are typically amazingly well done. The editing
Interesting.
is top notch.
I'm not a big fan of gore
And-
either, but I like horror done right. So I feel like
Yeah.
like any
This
genre.
is horror done right. It really is.
That's cool.
But what happens is all the people who then escaped are now stalked by death.
Interesting.
And throughout the rest of the film, each one of them dies in a gruesome manner. And by
Yeah.
the end of the film, roughly, everybody who escaped death is in fact dead.
Because they
So
walked
it's
into a
almost like
piano.
one of them sees a rip in the space-time continuum and responds to it. But then the space-time continuum decides, you know what? That shouldn't have happened. We're going to have to kill you anyhow.
Yeah, it makes sense.
There's a
If you believe in
sequence
fate,
the
it makes sense, which I do not.
What?
Said if you believe in fate, it makes sense, which I do not.
Yeah, I don't believe in that, but
Yeah.
but I understand
Appreciate a good
it
movie. Yeah,
enough to enjoy the movie.
for
I
sure.
can suspend disbelief. In the first movie, it's got a sequence that is edited as well as the shower sequence from Psycho.
Psycho. I thought you were gonna say Shawshank Redemption.
No, it is this sequence in a horror movie
I haven't seen
is
that one yet
edited
either.
and put together as gorgeously as anything Hitchcock ever did.
Okay, Hitchcock. All right.
Yeah.
Gotta
This
check that out.
family is in their van or their station wagon driving behind a truck with 20 or 30 giant logs strapped to it. And
I can
one
see
of
what
the
happens.
people in the SUV has their premonition. I think this may be this is the opening sequence of the first Final Destination movie. One of the people in the SUV has the premonition that a chain holding the logs to the trailer of this tractor trailer, one of the chains is going to part and the logs are going to fall off. And anything you can imagine happening at that point happens.
Okay.
And it's an absolute horror show. And there's lots of gore. There's people's heads getting clobbered by the ends of the giant saw-cut tree trunk. It's disgusting. But it is so amazingly put together. It's breathtaking. It's a horror movie that as you watch it, it's just like the producer and the director and the editor, cinematographer, they all deserved awards for that sequence. All of them deserved awards for that sequence. It's just absolutely amazing. So they pull
That's
off
awesome.
the road. And then the chain breaks on the truck. And everybody behind them on the road is decimated by this disaster. And this was, in the early 2000s, maybe.
Yeah.
You can still see memes up on the internet of the people taking a picture of the back end of a logging truck, and the caption is 20 years later, fuck you, Final Destination. I still can't drive behind one of these things.
That's amazing.
But yeah, it's gorgeous, gorgeous film work.
I
So
gotta watch Final Destination now. It sounds
yeah,
like
it is gory, and
I
you'll
like
see
a
what I mean.
Tarantino movie, even though it's gory. I mean,
Yeah,
like
it's
those
not
are
as
kind of
bad as like
playfully gory.
Phantasm or some of these, ultra gore movies, but
Yeah,
it's
like
approaching.
Kill Bill is fun, even though it's gory.
Kill Bill is not nearly as gory
Glorious
as this.
Bastards is pretty gory. That's fun.
Not as bad as this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is like Phantasm or Hellraiser or my 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 one of my least favorite science fiction movies, Event Horizon,
I haven't seen that yet.
with what's his name, who was the lead in Jurassic Park, the British guy.
I haven't seen Jurassic Park since the 90s. It's so gone in my memory.
IMDb. Let me look up. I know I'm going to remember his name as soon as I type in Event
I
Horizon.
remember they had Newman in Jurassic Park. That's the only character I remember
Yeah.
from Seinfeld.
So, Event Horizon, 1997. And Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill.
Sam Neill. Okay.
Sam Neill. And Sam
Never guessed
Neill
that.
was in Event Horizon because Daddy's Gotta Eat.
Makes sense.
There are people who love it. It's a moronic gore fest. It's a science fiction movie. There's this beautifully done ship called the Event Horizon,
Yeah.
which has a space folding engine.
Interesting.
But because of known issues with what that engine does to nearby space-time, they send it out under traditional propulsion beyond the orbit of Jupiter, and then they turn the engine on, and
Interesting.
The ship disappears, and it's gone for 5 years, and then it comes back.
Interesting.
But the problem is, in those 5 years, it's been to hell. Actual hell, or a space-time version of hell. And everybody who's left aboard that ship is absolutely, violently, murderously insane.
Interesting.
And there's a rescue ship that goes out to retrieve it, and they go on board, and absolute mayhem ensues. And Sam Neill is like chief violent lunatic. and it's just the exterior shots of the ships.
Yeah.
And the opening sequence is a beautiful zoom in, a rotating zoom in on Sam Neill shaving or somebody, doing his morning ablutions in the space station, or in a larger version of the space station. Absolutely beautiful work, and the ships are absolutely beautifully
That's
done.
awesome.
I met the guys who did the rescue ship. It was a company called Mass Effect out in Western Massachusetts.
Very cool. Mass Effect.
They had a giant 3D printer.
Yeah.
That they could print parts of. They could print like a 6 by 6 by 6 foot
custom
section of foam. They could just. It was a CNC. They would whittle away the foam with a 6 by 6 by 6 foot 3-dimensional CNC machine.
Yeah.
And so they did some very large ships for this
cool.
show. But once you get inside the ship and you see all the gore, it's without story justification. It's just
over the top.
Gore. It's gore porn, is what it is.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's like the porn you watch is really not about the pizza guy. It's just not.
It's funny because I know the one you're talking about, and I shouldn't. Big sausage pizza, of course.
Like when we walk into the engine room on the Event Horizon, it's a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. It's like a whole gimbal system, and it all rotates, sort of like the giant machine in Contact, except everything has 8-inch long steel spikes on it.
Why does it need that?
Because
of the ensuing.
It dissipates the energies of the space-time continuum distortion field. Whatever the fuck it does. Nobody cares.
It's meant to shred somebody.
Care if the pizza has pepperoni on it or not. It's not about the pizza. But the moment you see the engine room, that somebody, some poor bastard, is going to fall from a high parapet in the engine room and land on one of these rotating rings.
Even though there's no gravity.
Because that's what the movie is about. It's about the guy falling on the steel spikes and being impaled and being torn apart like you're brushing the coat of your friggin' tricolor collie.
That's pretty brutal.
So it is very brutal.
Sorry.
I I have the movie on DVD, and I told my kids, I said, listen, you can watch the first 10 minutes of the movie because the setup is good and the imagery is great. But the moment they get into the gore fest, if I catch you watching it, I'm shutting it down. I'm putting it back in the box. It's absolutely disgusting.
Which of course probably
The
made them
opening
want to watch
sequence
it.
is nice.
Yeah, which of course probably made them want to watch it. I said.
I think it probably did. But
Yeah. Have you seen? We might have talked about this, but did you ever see Avenue 5?
yes,
What'd you think?
the movie bothered the hell out of me until the final episode. Which can we give spoilers here for Avenue?
Spoilers. If you want to not see spoilers, maybe don't watch the rest of this or skip to
Okay,
the end.
if you don't want spoilers, now's the time to turn on NPR and listen to a blog about knitting.
www.givestevemoney.com before you go.
But the thing is,
Subscribe.
I normally don't like shows where the premise is that everybody is a moron.
I thought it was good.
Except in recent years, ever since I guess 2016, I've started to come to the realization that maybe life is that show. But in the last episode or two, I think it's the last episode, where people are convinced that they are on a simulation.
Yeah.
And they decide that the way off the simulation, off
through the airlock,
and back into the real world is through the airlock.
Yeah.
And all the morons on the ship march one by one out the airlock.
That's VFX.
At that moment,
That's
the show redeemed itself for me.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's a sorry state of mind for me to have, that it took all those deaths of all those poor moronic people for me to actually look forward to the next season. I think they're making a second season.
They are. It's been announced, and so I'm very excited for it.
But I love the shit rainbow.
The shit rainbow was hilarious. Like there were some really good bits.
There were some really good.
The coffin that they tossed out where they couldn't get it to stop orbiting, and it was meant to be like bad for morale to have the bodies, so they launched the coffins, and then the coffins started orbiting the ship.
But it was.
Or like I love the bit at the beginning with the they're trying to get rid of the what's it called, the delay to Earth, but like that's a law of physics. God. You can't get rid of that. And so I just the dialogue with the engineers to me was hilarious because it's so on the nose to what you and I probably experienced in real life. I know I have, where somebody's like, I want that fixed, and you're like, I don't know what to tell you.
We can't fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
sir, we're on it.
When I was working for Scenic, one of the guys who owned it and ran it was a Broadway show producer, Jerry Harris, who's a friggin' genius. I think he's recently retired. He also, as I said, Scenic Technologies spawned its own parent company, which was PRG.
Interesting.
Production Resources Group, which is a huge player in the entertainment field. They rent out sound and lighting and camera equipment, and just making money hand over fist. But awesome. One time, half jokingly, I think, I was talking with Jerry on a stage somewhere, and Jerry said, "What I'd really love is if because we have all these different flats that come down, and each flat has a certain depth, 6 to 12 inches of depth, upstage, downstage for each flat. And each flat represents a scene. Like if it was for Beauty and the Beast, you'd have a flat that would represent the background of the town. It's a painted backdrop. Or you'd have a flat that would represent some part of the castle that doesn't involve any action, but you need the background. It's like a matte painting in a movie. It's a static background. Sometimes there are little bits and pieces hung from the flat to give it some texture. But, on average, each flat is around 6 inches deep. And if you have, 10 flats for a show, that's a minimum of 5 feet of stage space or grid space you need to handle 10 flats at half a foot. That's 5 feet of grid space you're taking up, plus you need to have some clearance between each flat. And Jerry said it would be really great if I could fit 5 feet of flat into a 2-foot depth. And I said, Jerry, if I could manipulate space and time like that, I wouldn't be working for you. And he also complained about light ladders, which are these ladder-like structures welded out of steel pipe that hang perpendicular. If this is the front end of the stage, the light ladders hang like this off in the wings, and you hang lights from them. And typically these days, even 10, 20 years ago, there are these things called Verilights, which are multi-axis lights. You can control them from a console. Each Verilight has a series of addresses, computer, like an IP address.
Yeah.
And given an IP address, you now have, 18 or 20 axes of control, if you would, which includes colors and effects, but also includes pan and tilt positions.
Interesting.
So the light can pan and tilt, but in doing so, it applies a dynamic counter load to whatever it's mounted to. So if you have a Verilight or mounted to a light ladder, and the light ladder is suspended on wires from a set of hoists mounted to the grid, as those Verilights move, the light ladders will themselves move. They'll move counter to the motion of the lights that are moving on them. And then when you stop moving the light, the ladders will take a minute to settle in, and now the light will sort of be wavering. It's not what you want for the lights you're running on a Broadway show. And I said, Jerry, if you want, I know who to talk to. We could create a series of weights that then counter the movements and will stabilize these light ladders just dynamically. Because I had seen something like that, an early prototype of that at Aeroflex back in 1984.
Cool.
Someone had taken a cantilever, a spring cantilever, mounted a speaker coil with a weight on it.
Interesting.
And if you bounce the cantilever, it would bounce and it would die out after 6 or 7 cycles. But when he turned his stabilization system on and you bounce it, one cycle and it settles out.
That's so cool.
It was self-damping, and this was back in 1983. 84.
That's badass. And it must have been a big ass spring coil.
So here I am in the 90s, and I said, Jerry, this technology is over 10 years old, but I don't know if it's available for light ladders like this, but we could develop it and we could stabilize your light ladders. 10 years later, I'm paging through a theater technology magazine. Somebody has produced that exact device.
Wow.
For light ladders.
That took 20 years when you first saw it.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, to have made it successful would have taken on the order of a year, give or take 3 or 4 months.
How many people?
3 people.
Okay.
Probably.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah. You just, the thing is, you need a good servo guy.
Yeah, makes sense.
So and then the rest is just springs and voice coils and weights and a housing.
Yeah.
But
and then tuning, probably a ton of tuning. Well, that's the servo guy.
Its position, and then just a guy who knows his dynamics well enough to write up the counter effect program. To be honest, it's the same exact thing as these like the Bose silencing earphones.
Yeah, for sure. Destructive interference.
It's the same exact technology, but instead of trying to balance out the way air moves, you're trying to balance out a couple of 100 pounds of a physical object.
Yeah.
So you need a larger mass to swing around.
For sure.
But it was still doable. But
yeah, it makes sense.
But it wasn't something I was going to do on my own. So if I did, I probably would have been retired by now. Oh well. I have to think of the next one and then implement that. We'll see what I can do.
I was starting to mess around with hooking up lighting systems to computers in the 90s, and I was a kid, so I never actually commercialized or really built any of it at scale. And now that's mainstream. So I
got to have fun with after the October 2020 after that Christmas, after the Halloween show, the guy who was the artist for the Halloween show put on his own art exhibit. Uh, Darren Burkell put on his own art exhibit in the same venue, and he wanted a lot of multimedia. So we purchased a bunch of little HDMI video cards, some that could handle switches to input. So we had like multiple choice. You press a button, you get video A, B, C, or D. We also wanted just audio, no video. So you press a button and you cycle through a series of quotes that we
Was
were.
this the left brain, right brain?
This is left brain, right brain.
Cool.
And one of them, he wanted you press a button and you change the color or the pattern of the light that's projecting onto
I
the
love
wall.
some of those recordings, by the way. They showed me the recordings were hilarious.
So basically, this was during Arduino work, and they have an Arduino shield which lets you control a DMX channel.
Nice.
DMX is the
512.
way you control theatrical lighting and things like that. Like
We
the
used
Bear
it at
light.
SpaceX for the lighting for the data center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got the DMX shield. I can't write code from scratch, not yet, but I can edit stuff. So I downloaded the DMX code. I downloaded some other code and I pieced it all together. And so I created so that when you press a button, you would change the state of the light and it would time itself out and go back to neutral or whatever it was.
And there was a
So I got
voice,
to
like
have
there was a
fun.
sound clip that came in too, right?
Yeah, and sound clips. I think for the we had two installs at his show that had the DMX control. One was a left brain, right brain, and so you press a button and we realized that when we went through the quotes, the pre-recorded quotes randomly, that the nature of random is you can get repeats.
Of course.
Repeats fall under the heading of this is random.
So you had to change it.
So we had to change it to sequential because
Makes
nobody would be in the room long enough to hear the repeat if we made it
Interesting.
sequential.
So you went straight sequential, like a modulus and an increment.
Yeah, you just number from 1 to 28 or whatever the heck we had, and then once 28 is done, it goes back to 1, just
Smart.
on its own. That's part of the routine. And nobody was ever in the room long enough to hear all 28 statements. So for everybody coming in,
That's awesome. It's fresh.
it was a fresh system. And then the other,
If you
thing
stay
we
long
had
enough,
about
maybe you've
days-
been there too long anyway. So
what?
So if you stay there long enough, you're like, okay, maybe the magic should die because you've been
Yeah,
there.
I can't remember if he had somebody leading them through, but
Yeah.
and then he had a bunch of daisies, and each daisy had a push button from a video arcade, which you can buy on your own separately.
I've got
And
him
as
in
you push
my
the
shop.
buttons, each button would trigger a new statement, a new musical piece, a little musical snippet.
Cool.
But 4 of the buttons were dedicated to triggering color changes as well as triggering a voice change. So I had to have the Arduino tying into like 8 or 10 buttons, and then the 4 buttons tied in to another part of it. It was all fun, all programming, all worked out.
Yeah, it sounds quite enjoyable, and it was fun to see it. I mean, I was
Yeah.
definitely enjoyed the videos you posted in that quite a bit.
So that was good. But yeah, again, a little bit of programming, a little bit of engineering.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've done anything like that. I mean, I'm looking at kind of an art piece I did a while ago that takes up most of this office space.
Yeah. What's funny is now I'm working at a company called Quick Pouch, and Quick Pouch makes equipment that builds pouches. You take foil, plastic sheets, sometimes a foil / plastic sheet. You heat weld 3 sides of it. You put whatever it is into the 4th side. Then you seal the 4th side. You advance it. You put notches in it. You cut it off. You get the separate pouches. And it's an interest, and a lot of it is pneumatic. We're getting more and more towards electrically driven axes. So I get to size motors again. Which
Nice.
is fun. Yes. And so we're working through. I'm finding get my feet wet in there. The technical challenges are fun. The funny thing is, a lot of the axes are still pneumatic, and they're driven by PLCs and all the rest of it. And so I'm using some of the lessons I learned at Blood Manor
Nice.
to run small scale processors and pneumatic systems. I'm using them to help me wire up and troubleshoot some of the pneumatic stuff at my real job.
That's awesome.
And it's like, I had a little vacuum ejector by SMC. It has the valves built into it. You provide it with positive airflow. You trigger the first valve, and it creates a suction by blowing across a series of venturis. And now you can pick
Okay.
a part up with that suction. You release that, the suction stops. You press another, you close another valve, close the switch to another valve, and it gives you a little blow off pulse so that the piece you're hold on to now is released. And it worked great for pick and place robotics. But I said I need a couple of quick switches so I can try this out to see if the vacuum cup gag that I have rigged will work. Well, there were no simple switches available. There was this banner switch, which you have to stick your finger in the gap. And when you stick your finger in the gap, it closes a PNP switch. And so you have to get it power, you have to get it to switch right. And so I have all these loads, and this needs a sinking load, and this needs a sourcing load. So it's like, you know what? I've been doing this a lot over at Blood Manor. I know how to do this. So I took the lessons I learned at Blood Manor, and I looked it up and said, okay, this goes here, plug it into the terminal, the Wago terminal block, plug it in, works, fire it up, all good.
Nice.
So yay for geekdom.
Go team, go.
Yeah.
No, it's always fun when something you've done extracurricularly comes into the workplace like that. I mean,
yeah. Well, it was like, I think I mentioned this in the last one. I was obsessed with Ender's Game for a while, and I designed the battle school.
Wait,
not for the movie, but I did get to design the battle school for the Marvel Comics version of Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow.
Awesome.
They using my design, and I got paid for it. So I got to be an uber geek and make a profit by it. Got to be a fanboy, BOI, and make money on it.
Yeah,
so, but to design the battle school, I had to understand the centrifugal loading that you would see in these habitation rings. So I created a spreadsheet, and then I used that spreadsheet when I was at McLaren to design pieces for Ka and some other shows. So it's like, yeah. And when we first got some of the animatics and some of the drawings into McLaren for Ka, Jay Reichgott, who was like the VP, he was the assistant for the entertainment engineering group, said, Steve, I think these guys have been reading that book you keep talking about, because it looked like a battle room sequence from Ender's Game.
Nice.
And he goes, what do you make of this? It's like, well, I can make a hat or I can make a boat. No, I said because one of the early designs they had for Ka was the Escher cube. If you've ever seen Labyrinth, when all the people are walking on the stairs in all the different directions.
I have not. David Bowie's meant to be in that, right?
Well, David Bowie's in there, amazing.
I love David Bowie
as a Goblin King. But there's a sequence where they take this Escher design for a cube,
like MC Escher,
stairs in it. You'll find it. I'll send you the link. You'll include it. Your audience will know what we're talking about.
It's gonna be such an expensive editing bill, Steve. It's all right.
I'm trying to keep it to a minimum. It's the same image over and over again. Sure. But Kyle wanted this 30-foot by 30-foot by 30-foot tri-corner cube with all the stairways in it, and people to walk on the stairs in all the different directions while it's rotating on a giant robot arm. And that was one of the images that we saw. And Jay said, Steve, this is like straight out of your book. And it's very funny.
Your book being Ender's Game.
Ender's Game.
Yeah.
But a couple of months before, Murphy, who was the lead designer, I think he's still the lead designer, not an engineer, but he's a really good designer, over at McLaren.
Instead of Murphy's Law when you said that.
Yeah, he's so sick and tired of that joke.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You can probably imagine. But Murphy and I had attended a presentation on I forget the software, like Creo, maybe one of the 3D CAD programs,
Yeah.
but also by Z Corp, which is one of the earlier 3D printing machines, where it would be plaster of Paris and whale snot. They would take printer
Whale snot?
cartridges, refill them with like Elmer's glue, and then a bed of plaster of Paris. They laid down a layer of glue in the plaster of Paris, drop it down, whatever resolution they could handle, spread out another layer of plaster Paris, screed the top of it, lay down another layer of glue, drop sand, screed, glue,
Interesting.
and continue
Lost wax?
until you get. Do I have it? I have it right here. So because I haven't otherwise established my geek cred properly. I 3D printed
Oh, that's cool.
my design of the battle school. When Murphy and I attended this seminar, they said, because we're going to show you some stuff by Z Corp, send us your design and we'll print it out beforehand and we'll give it to you at the presentation.
Nice.
So Murphy, of all the things, Murphy designed in 3D a model of the Escher cube.
Cool.
And I designed a model of the battle school because I had already designed this in 3D for an animatic that I did, but I went and changed it. So as you, there's an actual built inside,
yeah, that's really cool.
Place between the two habitation rings. So as you rotate one ring, the other ring rotates. I created these hubs so you can actually see it rotating.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I am a massive geek, in case your audience hasn't figured this out yet. But so when the people from Cirque du Soleil came in and started to talk to us about the Escher cube sequence they wanted for the show, Murphy said, "Oh, do you mean this?" He takes it off his desk and he shows it, and it's like, I'm thinking, if we hadn't already won the contract at that moment,
we would have won the
contract. We would have won the contract. It was just too perfect.
That's awesome.
Eventually, we had to can that part. That never appeared in the show because they wanted it to fold up on itself and be hidden backstage somewhere.
Oh, how the hell do you do that?
And it's like, you can't do it. I was starting to make I was starting to design the world's biggest quick disconnect. The robotic end of arm tooling, where you want to have a quick disconnect between the robotic, the robot end of arm, and the gripper or the whatever.
Yeah.
There are plenty of companies that make them, but they're all around this big.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't overly familiar with robotic end of arm tooling, they're very similar to like a camera lens. If you have an old style 35 millimeter film camera, like a Nikon or a Canon or a Pentax or a Chinon, you press a button, you rotate the lens, and the lens comes off, and then you take a different lens, put it on, rotate it, and it clicks and it locks into place. I was trying to design one of those that was going to be around 10 feet in diameter.
Wow.
Because we had to swap the Escher cube out for another piece that was going to rotate, probably one of the main decks.
Moly. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I've always been a fan of quick disconnects. Now's my chance.
QD.
And as I'm looking at the rough sketches, it's like, this is insane. This needs to stop.
How would you actuate that even? I mean, the amount of air pressure you would need.
It was going to be electric motors, but it was going to have to be so damn fail-safe as to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it would have probably weighed 10-foot diameter. It would look like the Stargate is what it would have been. It would have been this damn Stargate, and it would have weighed 2 tons.
I'm sure.
As it stands, we have as I've mentioned, under the main platform for Ka, it's a 10-foot diameter ring bearing, which allows us to spin that. And that ring bearing would have been one of the smaller parts in this quick disconnect if we had dared to do it.
That's amazing.
But because we could never find a place to hide the Escher cube. In talking with the Cirque people, there were a couple of McLaren wound up changing a couple of the main show elements just to make them achievable.
That makes sense to me.
So, but I
I
said
still
that in
love
the
the bit
last
about
episode.
hiding that hydraulic ram in the wall in Vegas for emergencies.
I keep on thinking of Edgar Allan Poe's A Cask of Amontillado. It's walled up somewhere, and I have to think that in some post-apocalyptic nightmare future, someone's gonna unearth the wall and see this giant 70-foot tall cylinder and not know what, not connected to anything, just sort of hanging out on a stand or something,
Yeah.
and wondering what the hell it's doing there. As far as I know, they've never used it.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a good thing, right? That they
Yeah,
haven't
it
needed
is.
it.
Although, as I mentioned, they did do a repair to one of the other actuators for the tilt axis.
Interesting.
But and Ka is support. I think it's opened back up. They were going to open back up. I think like November 24th and November 26th
Cool.
this year.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. I'm glad
Yeah.
things are kind of opening back up finally.
Yeah. Well, opening and closing and opening and closing again.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had some friends who, one of my buddies was just in New York and his girlfriend's a Broadway sound engineer, and he was like, "Oh, I got to go to premiere." I'm like, "Good, glad you're getting out, and
Yeah.
being able to do stuff." It's
No, I mean they just had. It's not Broadway, but it's engineering. One of the engineering expos over at the Jacob Javits Center,
cool. That's a
just like
good expo
beginning of
center.
December. But one of the last shows prior to that at the Jacob Javits Center was an anime conference or expo conference or Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, whatever. And it's on record as being a spreader event
Oh, people
that
got sick
in
there.
part helped spread the Omicron variant.
That's unfortunate.
And so my friend, Fred was thinking of going to the expo, the engineering expo, and it's like it may not be worth it. I
Yeah.
mean, as much as I like to think that engineers are all, rational and reason based and all wear masks and get vaccinated, I know a bunch who are not.
As do I.
And it's like, so you're exposing yourself to a large crowd. Some of them are not going to be in compliance, which sounds like a
Yeah.
horrible,
The Omicron variant's meant to be vaccine resistant, right? So
what do you mean meant to be?
I just don't know this stuff, so I'm asking you. I mean,
Meant to be implies intent. I don't think there's intent for any of these, but
Nah.
that's just me. Perhaps I'm naive.
No, I'm just saying the common knowledge is that the vaccine doesn't stop it.
I thought they were seeing some prevention of spread of the Omicron variant with the vaccine.
Well, that's good at least.
As far as I'm concerned, everything that the CDC has recommended, nothing is 100%.
That's how it seems.
Nothing is going to be 100%, and it's not anyone's fault that it's not 100%. It's just nothing is 100%.
Well, nothing's 100% in life. I mean, ever. Like, if I get in a car, there's a chance I'll crash it.
Yeah, but when you layer 80 or 90% on top of 90%, on top of 70%, on top of all these things, then you really do start reducing your chances as best as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And to avoid an easily achieved layer of protection.
Yeah.
Is, why would you do that?
I don't know. I mean, so personally, I have my vaccine. I got the booster recently. But I don't know. I still like to go out because I'm very extroverted. And so if I expose myself to something I think is high risk, I'll get tested before I go around other people.
Yeah.
To me, that's an acceptable level.
Show.
What's that?
The whole thing with the Halloween show is thousands of people passed through every night we were open. And we did not require masks, but we did require proof of vaccination.
Yeah, that's common these days.
They were pretty good at asking to see proof of vaccination, to see the app or to see a photo of your card or to see the card itself. But it's still not 100% even that. People can come up with fake cards. You're not going to ask everybody. You're going to miss a couple of people here and there.
Yeah.
People will show you a picture of somebody else's card or whatever the heck the reason.
So I mean, ID checking seems to be common now. I've noticed.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
but
especially in New York, where you live in Long Island.
yeah,
So
well, I mean,
yeah,
New York is a bastion of liberalism, not 100% liberal, because
yeah.
nothing is 100%, but people for the most part seem not to mind.
It's just silly to me that there's politics attached to like like not getting people sick. Like I don't know, maybe just don't be an asshole.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
my opinion. I'm sorry to be political. I shouldn't do that.
I mean, a friend of mine's daughter was pregnant, and it's like I can without question understand the hesitation to get the vaccine when you're pregnant.
Yeah,
I understand the benefits, but the risks of taking a vaccine on or into your system while pregnant, I would say there are risks associated with that. One
sure.
one of the reasons is when my mom was pregnant with me, she
Yeah.
took Depra, not Depo-Provera. She took a medicine, an anti-nausea medication
Okay.
that was not well understood, and it led to me having a birth defect,
I'm
which
so sorry to
has
hear that.
affected my entire life. I have one leg that's shorter than another,
Yeah,
and now I wear a inch and a quarter heel lift.
I did not know
And
that.
I'm not the most elegant runner. Well, I can kick ass on a bicycle, but
Nice.
you know, I don't want to watch me run, and neither does anybody else. But
Yeah, well, thalidomide never made it through FDA trials because, FDA trials are stringent typically.
yeah,
But, in Canada, there were flipper babies all over the place. I mean,
yeah. So my mom took this medication that was not fully understood when she was pregnant with me, and it led to a problem. So I can understand how pregnant women can be hesitant. Other than that,
well, my dad said to me, he's a doctor, and obviously he was very pro-vaccine because of that. I mean, I got mine pretty quickly as well, just because why not? But he was like, like he was upset at like the African American community for not getting it. And I'm like, he's like, why would they not want to get it? I'm like, I don't know, dude. If you heard of the Tuskegee experiments, like,
yeah,
it's not really beyond me. Like,
yeah, no,
African
I had
Americans
that
wouldn't want to trust
discussion.
doctors.
I had that very same discussion with a friend,
Yeah,
and she was hesitant to get the vaccine in part because she's black, and in part because of the history of the U.S. government fucking with
not
people
giving a
like
fuck
that.
about black people. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, but it's like I said, come out to Long Island, go to the same doctor I did. I said, I doubt very much they have a separate vial on the shelf, one for white people and one for black people.
not on
I
Long
said,
Island. They don't.
I said, come on,
Maybe
it's
in
Long Island.
Mississippi.
Just go to the same damn doctor that I did. Go to the same time as I do if you want. And
Yeah.
if you see him swap vials, we'll both work out together.
That's funny.
But
Did she go?
she eventually did.
Cool. Any
But
third appendages or
no,
nasty
no,
stuff?
no big problems. No
Cool.
problems.
Awesome.
And I'm scheduled for my booster this Sunday.
Nice. I found an independent pharmacy in Pittsburgh that did it over lunch. It was so
Did you
cool.
have to make an arrangement? Or you just
No,
walked
that
in?
was great. Like I walked in, I was getting lunch with some coworkers, and I walked in and I did my paperwork in like 5 minutes, and I came back in and ordered my food. And then
Yeah,
while they were making my food, I walked in again and I got my shot, and then I ate with my coworkers. It was so pleasant.
yeah.
You don't see those indie pharmacies anymore.
One of my friends, I think, is in Oklahoma. He said, "Oh yeah, I mean, he's from Chicago originally, but he's now living in Oklahoma, and he's also in the medical field. He works at a pharmaceutical shop as QC. He did a lot of not vaccine development work, but genetic manipulation for biological testing. So you don't put it into your body. You take blood or fluids or whatever, and you put it into the vial, and it's been genetically modified, and it shows you if you've got this disease or not.
Interesting.
But he goes, Steve, he goes, it's Oklahoma. He goes, we have far more vaccines than we have people willing to take them. He goes, I walk into the CVS or the Walgreens or the whatever the heck it is. He goes, I show him my arm, I get the shot, and I walk out.
That's
He goes,
awesome.
it's sad. He goes, it works for me, but means he's surrounded by a bunch of people though who don't believe in this sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I had this talk with my dad, and he was very upset at people for not getting it. And I said, "Well, what difference does it make to you? If you've got it, you're protected." You
But
know?
again, it's all percentages. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
herd immunity thing is a percentage game. It's all layering percentages, and so it's to society's benefit if everybody. It's a prisoner's dilemma.
Prisoner's dilemma. I think
You
I've
you,
heard
you
of it.
have you've arrested two guys. You,
Okay.
you you think that they're both guilty of some crime, some robbery or whatever, and you tell each one of them. He goes, if you, in essence, if they both hold out and don't rat the other guy out, they're both going to see 10 years in prison, 5 years in prison. If how does this work? If I can't believe I've forgotten it. If you rat the other guy out, you'll see 1 year. If he
Interesting.
rats you out, he'll see 1 year. You'll see 10 years. But if you, I forget. It's
If you both rat each other
it's
out.
Nash, the guy from Beautiful Mind with game theory.
Yeah.
Prisoner's Dilemma is one of the game theory concepts he came up with. So
Yeah, that guy came up
there's
with a
a
lot of stuff.
reward for ratting the other guy out. Let me pull this up.
As long with the Nash equilibrium, there's a great XKCD on that with Feynman in it.
So Prisoner's Dilemma, Wikipedia. So if A and each if A and B each betray the other, each of them serves 2 years. If A betrays B, but B remains silent, if A betrays B and B doesn't say anything, A will be set free and B will serve 3 years.
Interesting.
And vice versa. And if they both remain silent, they'll only serve 1 year.
So silence is preferential no matter
So
what.
silence is preferential, but if you betray the other guy,
You can
then the
walk.
other guy gets 3 and you get set free. So the question is, what's the best way to respond? And the thing is, one of the things that did they mention Nash?
From a self-interest perspective, or what's the goal, or net
The
less
goal
of
is,
time
what
served?
is your best outcome for a
Okay.
single play, and what is your best outcome for repeated plays? Because I think once you start doing repeated plays, then everyone's going to betray the other guy right off the bat.
Same players, I take it.
Right.
Okay.
So
they remember what you did.
Right. So you're going to get 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. But if you both stay silent, then you both pay a little penalty, but overall you're better off.
Yeah.
So, I'm thinking with the whole vaccine thing, society is better off if people take the risk.
Yeah.
And
The risk being a vaccine.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a huge risk. Maybe it is. I don't know. It's
the thing is,
untested.
the risk of injury from the vaccine is far lower than the risk of injury from getting COVID.
Yeah.
And the risk of getting COVID is also far greater than the risks than the risk of having some debilitating thing happen to you for having gotten the vaccine.
Yeah.
So overall, you do risk. There is a small risk associated with getting the vaccine, but the risk of getting COVID and suffering long term from that is much greater. So on the average, if you look at 100,000 people, on the average, those people as a group will be better for having gotten the vaccine.
I see.
Though there will be some people, or there can be some people in that group who have a problem with that they'll develop a problem for having gotten the vaccine. And if you happen to be that person, that's going to be bad for you. But it's a percentage thing. And what you don't know is you can't compare with yourself the you that got the vaccine and the you that didn't get the vaccine.
There's no way to do that because
you have to
only
make
one
a choice.
exists. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I know people that haven't gotten it. I don't really hate them for not getting it. I decided to get mine because I wanted to, but
The thing is, I know some people who didn't get it. I don't hate them, but neither do I trust them.
interesting.
I mean, one of the jokes that people have said is, you know, if there were to be a zombie apocalypse, these are the people who wouldn't tell you if they got bitten.
I see. Well, that's an
They're
interesting way
they're
to put
they're
it.
they're, they're it's okay. It's okay, obviously, to have self-interest. We've all got it. I've got it.
Sure.
You've got it.
Of
But
course I do.
it's like there's a societal benefit which is betrayed by people who don't get the vaccine. They're within their rights not to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I got to play this prisoner's dilemma myself 12 years ago. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Holy crap. I'm sorry.
And that's okay. It happens. We've all got all us guys have prostate cancer.
Yeah.
I had 3 opinions, 3 different doctors, and they all agreed. And so I made a decision. But all of them said, listen, every single male on the planet has prostate cancer past a certain age. It's
Wow.
an incredibly slow moving cancer, typically. And sometimes it'll kill you in a couple of 100 years, in which case you don't have to worry about it. Other times it'll kill you in 10 or 20 years, in which case you do have to worry about it. And so we have tests, and the tests aren't perfect. And the cures are not perfect either. And the cures are always getting better. So I was diagnosed with a low grade stage 2 T1 stage T1C, whatever,
Yeah.
Gleason 6, back in 2007. And I talked to 3 different doctors, did a lot of research, and
This would have been the year before the
Cyberknife.
windmills.
What?
Just to place it, this would have been the year before the turbines, because that was 2008, I think.
Yeah, this is the year before the turbines.
Okay.
Troy was pissed. No, it was fine. So Cyberknife Treatment was just coming out. Cyberknife Treatment is stereotactic radiosurgery. They basically, with Cyberknife, which was not really available to me because it was still considered experimental, they take multiple beams of radiation.
Ooh.
None of which causes a problem by itself. They're all below the threshold of causing your DNA grief. But if you have them all focus on a common spot, the amount of radiation at that spot
Heard about this.
will burn out the cancer. And so
Cool.
in this day and age of all this 3D imaging, this now it's a relatively easy calculation. You can buy a copy of friggin' MATLAB or MathCAD, and you can probably run stereotactic radiosurgery simulation models 3 or 4 days, into the learning curve. It's probably a module you can buy for.
I would not trust MATLAB to decide where I get surgery at, but
well, I all but did that.
interesting.
So they took my samples. They took a number of biopsy samples. If you're they started with a blood test, and my PSA numbers were a little elevated, not horribly elevated. They were 4, 5, or 6 when they should be under 1. There were guys who have PSAs 20s, 30s, or higher. I was not one of those. So I had low-grade cancer. But so they took the PSA. It triggered the next round of tests, which includes a biopsy. Guys, if you are slated to have a biopsy and you have a choice if they can knock you out, have them knock you out. Because otherwise they stick a pair of snippers up your rear end, and they
actually did that without anesthesia recently.
I do not wish to describe, and which your doctor will tell you about it, and you'll say, yeah, knock me the hell out.
I did that without being knocked out recently.
Wouldn't you rather have been knocked out?
It was hilarious. Honestly, I was kind of proud that I didn't need anesthesia, and the doctor had such a great sense of humor. Like, I'll never forget it.
I will not let my pride get in the way of them knocking me out if something like that should happen again. So
they did take a biopsy, but the guy was like, he's like, I'm just trying to get it in now. I'll give you the tour on the way out. It's Dr. Lieberman. He knew my family. No, it wasn't Lieberman. It was who the hell was it? It was some doctor that like knew my grandfather because they worked
Oh my
together.
goodness.
He's like
So my first time they
Weissman,
knocked
I
me
think.
out, and that was fine. The second time they didn't, and I regretted it. But so they have the biopsy samples, they have the staging, they have the Gleason score, they have the PSA score, and then they have a nomograph, a chart, and you lay a ruler across the chart and you draw a bunch of intersecting lines,
Feinberg.
and the lines basically intersect on one side of the safe line of the safe zone or on the other side of the safe zone. And they said, Steve, your numbers are individually, your numbers are all low enough where you could conceivably go into watchful waiting. And watchful waiting is just as it sounds. You don't do anything except twice a year, you get more tests. And when your numbers start to go above a certain threshold, or when those intersecting lines on the nomograph on the chart pass into the not so safe zone, then you have to make a decision. You have to react and you have to do something about it. And I said, I am totally on board with watchful waiting. I'm willing to take that risk, but I will tell you up front, and I'm telling you, the doctor, this as much as I'm telling myself this, so I cannot back down from the decision. The moment you tell me that the lines on the chart intersect in the not so safe zone, in the zone where I have to make a decision, I will then make a decision. I'm not going to say, oh, but it's just a little bit in the safe zone. I'll be okay for another year. Because that, my friend, is how you boil a frog. You
Sure.
put them in the water and you slowly turn the temperature up, and it never gets quite hot enough for the frog to realize that he has to jump out of the water. And at some point, the frog is boiled
I've
and
heard
he's
this
dead.
adage. Yeah.
So I said, you guys are going to set the threshold, and I'm going to listen to you with regard to that threshold. And I will make a decision as to what type of surgery or what type of treatment I'm going to have. And if I get to do watchful waiting for a couple of years, I recognize that more treatments will become available or more treatments will become acceptable. They will no longer be experimental and my insurance might cover them. So I get to consider this Cyberknife, stereotactic radiosurgery, maybe in a couple of years if I can legitimately wait that long. And so they ran the chart and they did the lines and they intersected on the wrong side of the chart. All three doctors said, buddy, you are on the wrong side of the nomograph. You've got to make a decision. You've got to get treatment. And so again, there's this gaming theory, recognizing that I do not have perfect information and that they're only at best predicting the probability of how my cancer is going to progress.
Yeah.
And every type of treatment I might get has its own pluses and minuses and risks and probabilities of successes or failures.
Makes sense.
And I get to make a choice in among this imperfect playing field. And I did. And I chose to have, in my case, I didn't, they also have radioactive seed implantation,
Interesting.
where they put a bunch of radioactive seeds into your sensitive region,
Yeah.
and the radiation kills off the prostate.
Interesting.
And my thought on that, and other people's thoughts may differ, and that's fine that they should. My thought is that it's like cooking a hamburger in a microwave and then leaving it in the microwave forever. And I said, I don't want to do that. Luckily, the doctor, there's this Da Vinci surgical robot.
Yep, I'm well
It
aware of
looks like
that.
it looks like the brain bug from the Starship Troopers movie.
It's
It does. It's got like 6 or 7 tiny little nasty appendages sticking
got
out in
4, I
front,
thought, but maybe I'm wrong.
and it's a teleoperated force feedback robot.
Yep.
Force compliant, force feedback, teleoperated, multiple workstations.
There's Da Vinci
One of the
training stations and doctors' lounges I've been to visit
yeah.
clients before.
So I'm sitting with the doctor. I know all about teleoperated robots because I worked on teleoperated robots when I was at Grumman Aerospace. It was my second job out of college. I know all about force feedback from the same project. And so we're talking about it, and I'm asking him all the right questions. What happens if you have a power failure? What happens if you have to sneeze? Can you lock it? Can you lock it and rewind and then move forward again? Who's on the other systems? You have the nippers, the cutters. You have the pliers. He can sew a suture on a grape skin using the teleoperated tools and two grippers running off teleoperated forceps with
Awesome.
force compliant feedback. Well, one guy runs a camera and one guy runs a suction, and they're going into my lower
That's how
abdomen.
all the arms work. Okay, that makes sense actually.
Yeah, going through 4 or 5 different incisions, so it doesn't leave a mark. It's as it's invasive, but it's as
Yeah.
minimally invasive as you can get.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, I've been working on robots my entire life. They owe me one. They owe me this. And I said, so this is called robotically assisted laparoscopic prostatectomy. And I looked at him. I said, it's not really a robot. It's not running through pre-programmed move. It is at best a teller robot. And he looked me right in the eye and he goes, Steve, you know that, and I know that, and no one else in this entire building knows that nor cares about it. So we're just going to keep calling it a robot. Is that okay with you? I said, that'll be fine.
Nice.
And then so the day of the surgery, they start to drug me up before they wheel me into the room. They wheel me into this room. There's this giant Starship Troopers brain bug waiting to invade my lower abdomen, and I pass out, and then I wake up in recovery.
You passed up from anesthetics or just from seeing the thing?
No, I was fine seeing it. So I have some friends who, if given the choice, would want to be awake for that.
Nice.
I am not one of those people.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd want to be awake for a surgery. I mean, like I mentioned the colonoscopy, that's one thing. But if you're gonna put a knife in me, fuck that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't...
My since I'm of a certain age, as are you now. When I had my first colonoscopy, the doctor, the gastrointestinal guy, made the mistake of saying I could choose the music.
The music.
So I chose
Philip Glass. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Worse. It was right around the time of the year 2000. So there was all this fear of the
Celebrate good times, come on.
So I got a music. It was a CD, Music for the Apocalypse. It started with "Thus Spake Zarathustra," the opening music for the stocking sequence in 2001.
It's pretty funny.
And it went on to "Fanfare for the Common Man" by Aaron Copland.
I don't know that one.
So here's a guy with a camera, da 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 da. Very noble, very somber, very serious music. While this guy's got a camera up my ass, and he looked at me. He gave me a Valium or two, and the room lights are dim, and he goes, "Okay, lie on your side." And I said, This reminds me of my fraternity indoctrination back in college. He goes, really? I said, no, not really. But then he hits play, and Thus Spake Zarathustra comes on while he's slowly inserting the camera up my rear end. And he looked at me, and he goes, seriously? He goes, this is the music you chose. I said, you gave me the choice.
I love that. Dude, I like that the doctor too, like, so when I was getting mine and I did it without the anesthesia, he was like, so what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a robotics engineer, and he's like, well, how'd you get into that? And I told him the whole story. I had a relative that he knew. And I'm like, Lee took me to this place, and his name was also Lee, and he was like, oh, that's cool. And I'm like, yeah, I went to the National Box Engineering Center when I was a kid, and I saw a robot paint a thing, and I was really interested in it, and I decided that's what I want to work on. And I'm like, how do you get into what you do? He's like, I just really like assholes. And he starts chuckling in his own joke. It's like an 80-year-old Jewish guy. It's like crack tackling.
he's had time to work up his patter.
Yeah,
Got the
exactly.
feel going.
He was dying. Like he was like the 3-year-old. Like he got the funniest thing that he'd said in the world.
But I think for a couple of years after, when because this was in Cornwall, I was still in Cornwall. I would meet him at like the grocery store or something every once in a while, and he'd always go, "You."
That's funny.
But yeah, so this whole prisoner's dilemma thing, and one of the guys, I would go to like I don't want to call it Prostate Cancers Anonymous, but to support group meetings
Yeah,
for men who had suffered from it, who were still suffering from it, who had surgeries, or who were diagnosed too late
ah, it sucks
to really
balls.
do anything about it. And there were some guys there who looked absolutely horrible, and there were other guys there who were doing fine, and there were lots of guys in between. But one of the guys I met there, probably within a week or two of my surgery, he had his surgery across the street at a different hospital, different doctor. He didn't have the robotically assisted, but he still had a laparoscopic style. It was, handheld laparoscopic. And, obviously I'm not naming names, but he was incontinent for a good couple of years
Yeah,
afterwards.
sucks.
And I was not, because a luck of the draw, because it's like I said,
Sure.
it's all percentages,
Yep,
and
agreed.
B, the doctor I had, this guy Ashutosh Tawari, he had pioneered a lot of the methods for using the Da Vinci
That's pretty cool.
robot for this, including one of the problems when they remove the prostate gland, they remove the primary urinary sphincter at the base of the bladder. You have another
Interesting.
sphincter, but this is one of the two sphincters you have.
So it's harder holding
and
your pee.
so it puts you at risk.
Yeah.
What Tawari does is he creates, and again, with tiny little pliers on the end of a telerobotic system, he creates a sling of muscle tissue
Interesting.
as the urethra passes out of the bladder, because there's no longer that primary sphincter. There's
Yeah.
no longer a prostate there. He creates a little sling of muscle tissue to sort of, hold that tube against the bladder. It sort of pinches the tube, so it acts as a half-assed sphincter. That's probably a
That's
acts as a
funny.
half-assed sphincter. Is what is the ass, but yet another sphincter.
Of course, plenty of sphincters.
And when you apply pressure to urinate, it bypasses, it overcomes the muscle force,
Oh, cool.
and then when you relax, it puts the force back onto
How does
it.
does your brain have to learn how to control that, or does it just kind of work
He
by itself?
recommends Kegels for men,
Yeah, Kegels.
which I did for a while, and
I've done those too. I think every
honest,
teenage
I
boy
keep
that
up
read a
for life,
book that
but
they
I
stole
haven't.
from their parents has.
What?
So I think every teenage boy that read a book that they stole from their parents has tried that.
Let's try that. What the hell is this? Oh,
I found a book that was like my parents had this intimacy book that I stole when I was in high school, and it talked about Kegels, and so I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this.
my dad was a librarian. He taught library sciences. He was a librarian at a high school. He taught library science and was a librarian at C.W. Post College. One day, when I was a teenager, he brought home this big, like, Joy of Sex book. And then, a couple of weeks later, he goes, where's the sex book, Steve? I said, what do you mean? The sex book? He goes, Steve, I brought the book home for you to learn about sex. He goes, what did you do? I said, I hid it where you wouldn't find it so I could read it on my own. He goes, I know you have it. I brought it home.
That's kind of him.
So I left it out on the table and just, I probably never read it, but
I definitely read that book cover to cover that I got from my folks.
yeah. So Tawari did right by me, and then for a couple of years afterwards, I made myself available to the team.
Nice.
There was some prostate cancer support group. I got a couple of calls from guys, and a friend of mine right now from college is suffering similar numbers to what I had. So
it's good you can give back and help them out. It's good you can help them out and give them some insights.
Yeah, and I'm again, maybe my theater background, I'm not afraid to talk about almost anything. So
It's better that
so I
way, I
talk
think.
about it. And if one of your listeners hears this and has questions, they're welcome to hit me up to discuss. And
Sure.
if it helps somebody be brave enough to get a test when they were otherwise afraid to, I've done some good. It's a mitzvah.
Yeah, indeed.
It's my mitzvah.
And I completely agree. I mean, you can't just be afraid to look at medical problems. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd much rather rip the band-aid off, like STD test, like colonoscopy. I mean, you got to get that shit done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Colonoscopy. You got to get that shit done. Yeah, I get it. Very funny.
Thanks. I still love that this doctor said he would give me the tour on the way out of my asshole when he was. He's like, I'm just trying to get it in right now. Give you the tour.
Yeah. This is the tricky part.
Yeah, exactly.
Take a deep breath.
There's a transverse thing that goes across, which
Oh
I had no
yeah.
idea about. There's a bunch of interesting
Lean to the
stuff.
left, not to the right.
Exactly. I'm adding air now, so it'll go in. All right, now I'm adding suction to get rid of all the air I added in, so you don't fart everywhere.
I figured if we can find the humor in it, we can help overcome the horror of it.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did have some biopsy done. Luckily, no cancer yet, but
Yeah.
doesn't mean I won't. So
But
appreciate that.
like I said, it's all percentages.
Yeah.
And all you can do is try to put the odds in your favor.
I mean, we live in America. My odds of getting cancer are pretty high because I'll probably live a while and have a chance to get it. So,
yeah. Like I said, once you've had kids or past the age where you should have had kids,
that'll be me
nature's
probably.
done with you. Nature doesn't need you anymore.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You're more as far as nature's concerned, you're more than welcome to fall apart.
Yep.
Yeah, you evolve for a particular purpose, and that's to make more of you. Yeah, after that, it's all gravy.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
It's all a free play.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely am starting to notice that. I mean, I'm 33. I'm not that old, but I'm old enough that I know I'm not supposed to be here anymore by that standard. So,
dude, I'm 60.
Yeah.
With
any luck, I'll get there.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah.
One of the there was a young guy at the haunted attraction who 6.5 foot tall, very scary looking dude, and made up to look even scarier.
Nice.
But the thing is, I was running up and down stairs like 50 times a night. He was looking at me. He's going, I'm half your age, buddy. He goes, I can't even do that. It's like, you got to get started.
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree.
I'm an avid cyclist. For when I turned 60 in June of this year, I decided to ride my age on my bike. So
you told me about
picked
this.
a route, and I rode 69 miles.
That's awesome.
Yeah, or as my kids would say, nice. But yeah, so I'm playing the odds. I'm trying to keep myself in shape.
I can do 49 push-ups in a row now. I've been trying to kind of get that number up. Yeah.
I can do 15, take a 5-minute break and do another 15.
Well, I didn't start at 49, so I started at 8, and I would keep adding more on, and that's how I got up to 49.
How long did it take you to go from 8 to 49?
Maybe like 4 months, 5 months.
Okay.
Yeah, just doing it like every other day, every day.
Last time I tried to get aggressive about push-ups, I pulled something on my shoulder.
Usually I can only get up to 30, and so
I feel better now. Thank you.
Yeah. Usually I can only get up to 30, but there's a few times when I've like kind of spiked, and you just get this kind of drive to see how far you can take it. So that's I don't know.
All right, 4 months. Let's see what I can do.
Yeah. I mean, if you want, I have
how many push-ups I do.
I have a buddy who's a performance engineer in NVIDIA, and when one of us does like a lot of push-ups in a set, we'll text the other one how many we did, and then the other one will try to one-up that person. So if you want to join our club, you can text me your number.
I'm gonna only compete against myself. Last time I downloaded some insane, fitness app. It had me do like, run through this routine on a Monday, this routine on a Wednesday, this routine on a Friday. but it was like by the time you were done, you had done like 60 or 75 push-ups. And after 2 weeks, I definitely pulled something in myself.
Fuck. There was this one I saw, Iron Wolf, this guy that's like used to be a Marine on YouTube, and he's got these workout sets, and it's like, all right, now do 2 burpees, now do 2 push-ups, now do 2 sit-ups, now do, and it's like, it was like, because I was always making the excuse that I didn't have the time to do it because of my work. And so that was my reasoning. That was why I never worked out and always sat on my ass, is I just didn't have the time. And so this guy had like a 12-minute set that was fucking brutal. Like I did it and I got like 3 minutes in and then I just collapsed from exhaustion. Like, all right, I can't make that excuse anymore because I have 12 minutes. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
No, my son handed me a link to not P90X, but some other X style thing, and it was good. And I did it for a while, but it's like a 15-minute a high intensity training thing. But
Nice.
I was doing it, but with my low, because of the birth defect and the leg length difference, it's causing me back issues. I've had surgery for the back, so I've got to do back, like, my proper back stretches and core
Makes
strengthening
sense.
and if I do that to the exclusion of trying to look like, freaking Jack LaLanne, I'll try to keep my core in shape
Yeah.
rather than try to make myself look like a 35-year-old.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, you're like you said. I mean, you really only should be competing against yourself. I mean, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I not the handsomest
So how
guy.
many
Like
sit-ups? So how many sit-ups can you do?
sit up. I mean, maybe like 100. Like I haven't been doing a whole lot of sit ups lately, but it used to be that I could do. I would do 100, and then I could get up to like maybe 120
Yeah.
a set. I mean, I'm sure I'm down below that now because I haven't really been doing it
I,
lately.
I that's about where I am. There was back when I had more room to work out. As you can tell, this place is a bit cramped. I hit 200 once or twice.
Holy crap! Yeah, that's above my record. You got me beat.
Right now, the apartment, the master bedroom of the apartment I was in is 3 times the size of the master bedroom in the house that I now half own. I think if I tried to do a burpee in this place, I'd probably knock myself unconscious on a piece of furniture.
Me. I have a buddy from well, not from. He worked at NASA. He recently left, but he made it his New Year's resolution to lift his body weight 100 times every day. And he's like, and ever since I did that, Spencer, I've got this rockin' body. So his thing he was telling me to do was to do a burpee and then jump onto a pull-up bar and do a pull-up. And I was
Oh,
like, that would kill me. Like I probably should, but I'm sure it's a lot of
I'm,
shock
I'm,
to the
I'm
system.
tempted. I cannot do a pull up.
I can do about 8, but I couldn't do one when I started. So
Yeah,
I mean,
but
you get better.
well,
The way to start is you get a band, like a giant ass rubber band, and you put it on your foot, and you use that for assist. And then when you can
yeah.
do that, you can do a few of
Well,
those, and you start to lose it.
at the Planet Fitness near me, they have those machines. They have the drawdown bars with the
Yeah,
weights. So
that's how
I
you.
do
That's
100
like
reps
like
there.
that's my first pull up, right? I mean, that's how you get into it.
Yeah, my first pony, my little pony, my little
Yeah,
pull up.
exactly. My little pull up.
But I'm I'm I haven't gone to the gym since the pandemic began because it's crowded and it's quote unquote intimate. It's a rather close quarters with a bunch of other people.
Yeah, I just don't like going to the gym a whole lot. I haven't gone since the pandemic began either. I used to go to the rock climbing gym a lot, and I don't know. At first, I was like afraid of getting sick. Now I'm not really. I don't know. I'm at the point where I feel like I just want to live my life more than I don't want to get sick. And so,
Yeah.
if I get it, I'll deal with it.
The Planet Fitness, as of this Monday or last Monday, I think last Monday, they were imposing a mask mandate where regardless of your vaccine status, you need to wear a mask.
It's gonna make it difficult to work out, though. You'd think,
It, it
because
but it doesn't. When
doesn't.
I did those 69 miles,
Yeah,
I did 50 of them
the mask
in a
on.
mask.
Interesting.
In part just to see if I could,
Yeah.
And it's hard in case any whiners and any whiners near me were to say, "Oh, but it's so hard to work out in the mask." It's like, you know what? It isn't. I'm
Yeah.
60 years old. I rode 50 miles with a mask, and I only took it off for the last 19 miles
Uh,
because it was starting to get annoying and a bit moist.
Moist
But
for sure. I've noticed that.
yeah, but other if I had a second mask, maybe, or if I didn't realize that there was nobody within 50 feet of me or more while I was riding,
Yeah.
I wore the mask for the first 50 miles just to prove that it was doable.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean,
It
I'm
was
in favor of that
easily
sort of thing.
doable. There was not the slightest problem with
Yeah.
wearing a mask.
Yeah.
So that's not a legit thing.
I mean, I haven't run into it because I work out at home, so
Yeah,
it's
right. You don't have to
not
worry
not
about
an issue I'm up against. Where I'm riding my bike out by myself. So I don't know.
it. Yeah. It's still weird to see, back over the summer with the whole where are we with masks in the outdoors? If you're riding, some with, some without, some would have them down and they'd put them up if they were getting into a crowded area. It's just like people were all, trying to do, most people were, I got the sense were trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, yeah,
But
for
we
sure.
weren't quite sure what that was because, in all honesty, you're 50 to 100 feet away from the next nearest person 90% of the time.
Yeah. In which case, in my opinion, it doesn't matter. But I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
Uh,
So, and what about the guy who like rides through your exhaust plume?
yeah, yeah.
Is that an issue? Is that not an issue?
How fast are you going, and how fast is that person
Yeah.
going? What's the
And the
difference in
other thing
time?
is, I would sort of use the biking as my ad hoc COVID test. I'm thinking if I can ride, I can easily ride 15, 20 miles without much concern at all. But it's like if I can ride 15 or 20 miles and not get short of breath, I probably don't have a pulmonary issue
Makes
such
sense.
as COVID.
I was getting so many COVID tests back in the day because I was still doing these podcasts and I wanted to do some in person. So the protocol I used, at least at first before the vaccine was around, was everybody got COVID tested before they came on, including me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean,
No,
I've had so much stuff up my nose. It's kind of silly at this point.
but when my son was doing all the film acting, they said we need you to come in the morning before and just get a COVID test, and then we'll know the morning of the shoot how you guys are doing.
Yeah,
They took it very seriously.
that makes sense. I mean, for me at least, it was partially a CYA, partially just not wanting to. You don't
Yeah.
want to get other people sick, is really what it was for me. Like, I don't really care about me, but I don't want to be a jerk.
My favorite thing was the 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 blow up that Tom Cruise had on set. Did you see that?
No.
Early on in when before the vaccines were available, but when masking was now slowly becoming recommended or mandatory, uh, Tom Cruise was producing a film. I don't remember the name of the film, but
The
a bunch of the
douchebag name.
crew on the set were not following the proper masking
Oh,
protocols,
interesting.
and he had a meltdown on them. He was screaming at them, and somebody recorded it with their cell phone and posted it. And every single person I know who is in the theater or entertainment industry, whether or not they ever liked Tom Cruise before, every one of them said, "I am with this guy. He's a little over the top, but to be honest, totally supporting his approach to yelling at these stupid motherfuckers." And people not in the industry were sort of mixed, but there were a good number of people who thought he totally overreacted and he was totally inappropriate and what he did was wrong. And everybody in the entertainment industry I knew said, "Oh, totally agree with him. He was totally in the right. And what he did was perfect, and that's how you got to be."
There's a little mom and pop shop around here, and I kind of like their approach to it. They had this sign that said, you wouldn't wear your pants like this. And it's a picture of a guy with his dick out in front of his pants. And it's like, so why
Oh,
would you wear your mask like this? It's like,
that's
where's it in
very
that?
specific.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Apparently, some old guy tried to get them in trouble with the landlord for it, but the landlord thought it was hilarious and was not mad. My friend Alex, who's like, I guess the pop of the mom. It's a husband and wife that run it. They don't
Yeah.
have kids, but Alex was like, "Who doesn't like a dick joke?"
Yeah, who doesn't? I mean, I'm supposed to be politically correct and all that, being a liberal and all, but
Yeah,
I I love a good rude joke. I'm sorry.
yeah, they're fun. Well, I mean, liberal. This was a gun shop. It's kind of funny.
Ugh,
Yeah,
but
but I mean, I don't know. They're nice people. Yeah. All
okay.
right. So thanks. Is there anything you want to plug while you're still here for
I,
your call?
I I think I've plugged all I need to plug.
Cool.
I plugged my company. I plugged Tom Cruise. I plugged my son.
Yeah.
I plugged Night Teeth, now available on Netflix. Go ahead and
Night
stream
Teeth.
whatever you
Watch
want.
it. Netflix.
And
I'm gonna watch
Apple
it.
TV with in with the devil in 4 or 6 months, I estimate.
Nice.
I plugged my company, so
Plugged Blood
I plugged a former
Rain.
company or two. So
What was the name of the haunted house or
the
the
haunted house. Oh, that's right, Blood Manor.
Blood Manor? Right, Blood Manor.
www.bloodmanor.com.
Cool. Night
He's now
Teeth
doing
on
a Christmas
Netflix.
show, and I feel bad that I don't remember what the Christmas show is called. Christmas on Broadway. I'll send you the link. You can,
Awesome.
or I'll post it to the YouTube channel once you have this out.
This is the one your daughter was doing the Minnie Mouse impression at, or a different one?
Oh, no. The Minnie Mouse impression was during we were doing A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
This was 15 years ago or so. Christmas with Stormy Weather Players. My ex and I, president and vice president of Stormy Weather Players, a community theater group in Cornwall, New York. We were doing Christmas Carol, the musical, and I had watched not all of because it started to get creepy, but I had watched part of The
Oh, I
Aristocrats.
love the Aristocrats. I've seen it
Not
all.
the Aristocats, not the Disney movie. The Aristocrats, the very rude movie.
Yeah, no, my parents just gave me a copy when I visited
Oh
them in
my
Ithaca, New
God,
York.
good parents, good parents.
Yeah, no, them and I used to watch it together when it came out around 2005, 2006.
Yeah. So Ellie and I had watched it, and uh, it's basically a horribly rude vaudeville style burlesque joke that gets ruder as time goes on.
Well, depending on the
Ellie,
comedian too, it's meant to be riffed on, so it's like
yeah,
jazz.
that's just it. It's like never written down. It's word of mouth.
Yeah.
And you never know where those mouths have been.
I think Bob Saget's version was my favorite.
Oh God!
I don't know who you like the best.
And the other guy who did Christopher Walken doing the
Christopher
joke.
Walken was in there?
No, Christopher Walken was not in it, but I forget the name of the actor, the comedian who did a really great Chris Walken impersonation,
I'm
telling
gonna
the joke.
rewatch it.
And then the other great part is the mime.
Billy the
Telling
Mime.
the joke.
Yeah, that was Billy the Mime.
That was wonderfully
He
horrible.
he has this bit called what was it? It was A Night at the Monticello with Sally Hemings, and it was about like yeah, you know.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. And Thomas Jefferson's favorite person.
yeah,
But,
exactly. And so it's not a Billy the Mime is Billy the Mime.
but just to complete the story, here we were getting dressed in Victorian England sort of outfits. My daughter putting on white gloves to play the Victorian lady, all of a sudden decides to channel Minnie Mouse telling the Aristocrats joke, which if you've seen the movie or found it on YouTube, you'll know what I'm talking about. So she's in a room full of people ranging in age from 7 to 70, most of them rather proper Christians, since we're doing,
Christmas Carol.
this is upstate New York, and it's predominantly.
And you're both Jewish.
We're Jewish
like
atheists,
me.
and I think it's well
As
known
am I.
that we are.
Yeah.
And here my daughter is doing this rather blasphemous thing. She puts on the gloves. She starts telling the story in a squeaky Minnie Mouse voice, and there are 7-year-olds in the room. And she gives the setup to the joke. And just as she gets to the part where it's about to get unforgivably rude, she stops. And as part of the physical presentation, to signify that she has stopped telling the joke, she takes off the white gloves and walks out. And
That's
it's
awesome.
like, I was never prouder of her. As I'm watching her go down this path, I'm thinking, if she doesn't stop, people are going to set us on fire.
Yeah, you're gonna get lynched. It's one of those moments.
Gonna get lynched if she doesn't stop. I am trusting her at the age of, she is 13 or 14 years old at the time. I am trusting her for her ability to read the room. And she read it perfectly. And she played the part perfectly, including the purely pantomime ending of taking off the gloves and, in essence, coming out of character.
Wish I could see a video of that, of her doing
And
that.
it was just a beautiful thing to behold.
That's amazing. You've raised some good kids, Steve.
I know.
Hi,
And
man.
they have great senses of comic timing. They're both great at ad-libbing. My son was playing a background character in in Our Town, the Horton Foote, the very sad and morose piece Our Town. And he played just a background character who walks on stage, has a line or two. And he goes out during rehearsal, and because the director of the show knew my theatrical engineering background, he said, "Can you design the set for me?" I said, "Sure." And I said, "What do you want it to look like?" And he goes, "A ramp up here, a ramp up there, platforms at the top, raised levels here." And I said, "You do understand that the set you've just described," and I sketched it out for him. I said, "It looks like the command bridge on a Klingon ship." He goes, "It what?" I said, "It looks like the command bridge on a Klingon ship in the voyage home." He goes, "Make it look less like a Klingon ship." So I did. It was fine. But so Greg's on stage. He comes out. Another young guy comes out. And the first guy says, and this is during rehearsal, so it's okay to ad-lib a little bit. So the first guy comes out and he goes, "Oh, that's some moon." And Greg looks up and he goes, "That's no moon." Straight out of Star Wars.
It's funny.
But so they're good. They're
Cool.
good. It was an important goal for me to have kids who are funny, not just funny looking, and I succeeded.
That's awesome. If you stuck around this long and you like what you've heard, please give us a like and smash that subscribe button, or smash that like button and give us a subscribe. We're always looking for new and interesting people to have on the show. If you know anyone good, send an email to podcast@ska.solutions or leave a comment below. Thanks again for listening, and please come to the next one.